Thank you, everyone, for coming this morning to the Advancing Racial Equity in Marin County First Five Communications Forum. I am your First Five Chair, Dr. Itoko Garcia, welcoming you back for another month. It's wonderful to see so many friendly faces here in the space, so many people dedicated and committed to doing equity work here in our local community and our county. The very first thing I'm going to ask you to do is look up here and fold your arms just like this. Fold your arms just like this. Now, you may not know something, but since you were a tiny baby, the very first time you learned how to fold your arms, you did so in exactly the same way you are right now, with one arm on the top and one arm on the bottom. Look down, see which arm that is. Now I'm going to invite you to try to put your bottom arm on the top and your top arm on the bottom. And I want you to hold the feeling right now in your body. Hold it, because it should be a little uncomfortable. And that's what doing equity work should feel like. Okay, you can shake it out. You can shake it out. Okay? We need to get a little uncomfortable today. In order to learn and grow, you have to get outside of your comfort zone. And science is very clear. We don't like to do anything that changes our routine as adults, even if we have been shown that it is a more efficient or effective way to do things. We still won't do it because it makes us change our routine. And that, folks, is why doing equity work anywhere is so difficult and so challenging, and particularly here in Marin County. So, I would like you to please give a warm welcome to our Executive Director of First Five, Maria Niggle. Maria, where are you? Thank you, over there. And to all of my colleagues that are our First Five commissioners over here, we'll give a wave. If there's any other commissioners in the room, please stand up and wave. And also, can I get a big round of applause for Michelle Fideli? These communication forums don't happen without her. So, one of the things that gets frustrating for a lot of people in conversations about equity is we want to focus on action, and we want to focus on impact. But I want to point out to you something that's very important, which is if you're not having a conversation at all, a conversation is really an important action. And sustaining a conversation around equity is really an important action. So today we're inviting you into a conversation, a courageous conversation. Some of you may come intellectually. Some of you may come emotionally or spiritually. Some of you may come with the desire to move your body and your hands and your feet and take action. And some of you may be here for moral purposes. Whatever space you're entering this conversation from is the space that is good and right for you. And so I want to encourage you to experience discomfort today. I want to encourage you to talk to the people at the forum and talk to the people around the table. Because one of the other most challenging things in doing equity work is a lot of the times we're not speaking the same language or even talking about the same thing. I challenge you today to figure out how many different definitions of equity exist at your table. And when you don't agree, I invite you to stay engaged in the conversation. I invite you to experience that discomfort. I invite you to accept and expect a little bit of non-closure in an equity conversation. Now, part of the reason we're having a challenge with equity, particularly here in Marin County, is oftentimes there are not enough people from this county to lead equity work. And so we are constantly getting people from other places to come and do equity work in Marin. And the challenge is equity work requires communication, it requires relationships, it requires identity. And if you're not from here, that can be very, very difficult and challenging to navigate. And as someone who is from here, I can tell you, it can still be difficult and challenging to navigate. Right? There's a lot of people in Marin genuinely and seriously committed to equity. I'm a product of Marin County. I went to Marin County elementary school, middle school, high school. My family's lived here for several generations at this point, as have many people in the room. There's tons of people who are committed to this work in this county. And they will come up and they will hug you and they will tell you that they're behind you. The thing is, though, the people who are critical are always the loudest voices in the room. The people who are critical will always get the quote. And so one of the things I want to invite you to do is really reflect on how you as an individual can show up and support people doing equity work in this county. If there's a loud criticism, where's the counterpoint? I know you all are here. I don't always see you in a newspaper article. I don't always see you at the board meeting. I don't always see you in these spaces. And so I want to really invite you. This work is hard. There are a lot of people here who will check the right box and who will say the right thing. But when it comes to actually showing up and taking action, that's where it gets really hard. And that's what I want to invite you to do. Because the people that don't want equity to happen in this county, they will always attack process first, and then they will attack the person. And when you all see that happening, I want to invite you to stand up and provide a counter narrative and provide a counterpoint, provide support for the people that are out here trying to do this work. Because it's hard. So I want to invite you all to look at either an elbow partner or somebody across the table and say this to each other. Equity is my responsibility. And I want you to say one more thing. Equity in Marin is my right. So, without further ado, we are going to begin with a partial presentation of the Race Counts report from Catalyst, California. That report, you may have heard, originally identified Marin County as #1 for racial disparities in the state of California. We have now improved to #3. You know, we could clap, actually. We could clap. Yes, we shouldn't be applauding that we're the third most racially disparate community in the country. That's not a laudable thing. But we should be applauding that we're no longer the first most racially disparate community in Marin, and we've made some progress. Because this is about progress, and this is about action today. So, we'll also, after we hear from the amazing Matt Trujillo, and some of the improved data that we have. But it's still gonna focus, we're gonna ask Matt to focus on the racial disparities in education and academic opportunity today. Afterwards, we'll hear about the county's race equity action plan and the implementation strategies. And then we'll hear about some strategies from around the Bay and hear from local representatives about equity of opportunity in Marin. And then you all will get to talk. Here's the last thing I want to say before I turn it over to Matt. You know, the reason that racial equity is what it is in Marin is because it's structural. It's not an accident. It was planned. Check your housing covenants. Check the way schools are funded. Check the way property taxes are distributed. Because all of these things create the outcomes that we're here to try to balance out today. And so I want to leave you with this. The only thing that will ever counteract decades of planned structure is you all working together collectively. And I'm so glad we've got our DA, Lori Fragoli, here, and our San Rafael mayor, and I see some folks from other public agencies in this county. The only way we'll ever make a change in Marin is if we all work together, if we adopt some focused goals together, if we measure those goals together, and if we hold each other accountable. So please give Matt Trujillo a big round of applause, because he's going to talk about some data that's going to help us do that.
Wow, that's going to be a tough act to follow, but I'll do what I can. Good morning, everyone. I'm Matt Trujillo. I'm the Associate Director of Strategic Initiatives at an organization called Catalyst California. We do racial equity work throughout the state. Part of what I do is I help manage our Race Counts initiative, which I'm going to be talking to you about this morning. I'm a bit of a public health nerd, so I'm going to start with a quick public health story, a story about Jon Snow. Not that Jon Snow, another Jon Snow, this Jon Snow. In 1854, there was a cholera outbreak in South London, and Jon Snow was tasked with trying to figure out what do we do about it. And it was pretty novel at the time. What he did was he actually tracked where were the cholera cases, and he mapped them in South London. And what he found out was that a lot of these cases happened to be around a certain water pump. Now, at the time, we didn't know that cholera was a waterborne illness, right? He had a hypothesis based off of where the cases were. Maybe it was actually that source, that water pump, that was leading the outbreak. And so he tested that hypothesis. He removed the handle of that water pump. And before you knew it, the cases of cholera dropped significantly, right? I tell this story because this is a good story about the power of data, the power of mapping, of analysis, of tools to pinpoint the source of a crisis, help us identify what could be a potential solution to that crisis, right? And it is that belief in the power of data, the power of mapping, the power of analysis to address our crises that is underlying, it's at the heart of our Race Counts initiative, right? We believe that data, analysis, mapping, other tools can help us address other crises like systemic racism, anti-blackness, white supremacy, right? That is what is at the heart of the creation of Race Counts. Race Counts was created by my organization, Catalyst California, in partnership with a number of different policy advocacy, community organizing groups throughout the state. Some of them are listed here on the slide: PICO California, California Calls, USC Equity Research Institute. And it's an initiative that provides comprehensive racial disparity data from throughout the state, even at the local level, including county, and more recently we added city level data to our website. But we don't just provide data, we also provide research reports, data briefs, and we provide technical assistance and partnerships with community-based organizations, like a lot of the folks that you are in this room, to help support your policy change and system change initiatives in your communities, right? So that's the heart of Race Counts. Diving a bit into our data now, we have data across 7 issue areas: crime and justice, democracy, economic opportunity, education, healthcare access, healthy built environment, and housing, right? That's how we organize our data. We have multiple indicators within each one of our issue areas, over 40 indicators overall. One of the things that we do is we create an overall, what we call racial equity index, where we provide an index that looks across all indicators and how folks are doing. And then we have an index for each issue area, looking just at the indicators within it, and of course, specific analysis for each indicator. It's a lot. I'm not going to have time to get through everything. I'll focus on a few of the specific indicators and issue areas today. So this is one of the main ways we visualize our data. This is a scatter plot. It provides what we call a 3D or three-dimensional view of racial equity. This is a scatter plot of counties throughout the state. I want to walk you through what this looks like. Let me see if I can get this. All right, it works. So one dimension is what we call outcomes. That's the vertical or the y-axis here, right? So if you look at our scatter plot, if you go from the bottom to the top, counties are going from worse outcomes to better. So you want to be up at the top. Boom, there's Marin. Congratulations, you're doing really well on outcomes, right? On the horizontal axis, or the x-axis, that's disparity. So from left to right, you're going to have lower disparity to higher disparity, right? So you don't want to be here, Marin. You're, pretty far there. You're number 3, right? The other dimension that we have is what we call impact. So that's about how many folks are impacted by the outcomes or the disparities that we exist. That's represented by the size of the dot, right? That's essentially population size. The bigger the population in the county, the bigger the dot, right? So LA, being the largest county in the state, that's a pretty big dot. So a lot of folks are going to be impacted by the relatively poor outcomes in LA County. Does this make sense? One thing to keep in mind is basically this is the midpoint, right? So anything to the right of the midpoint, you're going to have higher than average disparity. The midpoint is the average for the state. Anything to the left of that is going to be lower than average disparity. Anything above this is going to be higher than average or better than average outcomes. Anything below is lower than average outcomes, right? And the further from the middle, the further either better or worse you are from the average. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so we try to make it a little bit easier for folks. It's pretty complicated, so we created quadrants, right? Based off of where a county is on that scatter plot. So if you're in the top left of the scatter plot, you're in what we call the purple quadrant. That means you have better than average outcomes and lower than average disparity. That's a good place to be. That doesn't mean you've succeeded, right? There are still disparities and still inequities even though you're in there, but that means you're doing fairly well compared to other counties. If you're on the top right of the scatter plot, you're in the orange category. That's what we call prosperity for the few. That means you have better than average outcomes, but also higher than average disparities, right? If you're in the bottom left of our scatter plot, that puts you in the yellow. That means you're doing worse than average on outcomes and lower than average disparity. Now, mind you, that's not how you want to reduce disparity. You don't want to reduce disparity by having everybody go down, right? So worse than average outcomes means everybody's doing pretty bad, so there's not a lot of disparities to be had. That's not how you want to do this. If you're in the red, that means you have poor, worse than average outcomes and also higher than average disparity. So it's kind of an easy way just to tell where a county is doing on both outcomes and disparity. All right, so I'm going to go over a quick run through of the state, then we'll dive in a bit onto Marin County. This is the scatter plot for overall racial equity index. A couple things to point out, some stuff that stood out to us. Actually, it looks like a lot of those lower population counties are going to be in our red quadrant, right? Higher than average disparity, worse than average outcomes. Mono County, one of the smaller in the state, actually has the highest disparity in the state. There are a few exceptions. There are a few small counties, San Benito and Amador counties, that have higher than average outcomes and actually lower than average disparities, right? When you start looking at moderate size communities, you see San Francisco and Marin up top, San Francisco a little below, right? Having really high outcomes, but fairly high disparity as well. All the way at the bottom, you see a few Central Valley counties, Fresno, Tulare, and Kern, having some of the worst outcomes in our state. Of course, LA, the big dot, is going to be anchoring our yellow quadrant. Again, worse than average outcomes, lower than average disparity. That's the case for a lot of Southern California, where folks are just not doing well, and that kind of masks what disparities could be existing. To look at some highlights, there's some bright spots. You have San Luis Obispo right here with the green arrow, actually a pretty good mix of high outcomes and low disparity. And then Orange and San Diego counties being relatively large counties that are also in that purple quadrant, right? Having lower disparity and higher than average outcomes. So that's a mix of a quick rundown of the state. Let's look at Marin specifically. Before I do that, just a quick regional analysis. I know there's some other Bay Area folks here. Basically, in a nutshell, Bay Area, you all are doing really well in outcomes. You're, for the most part, middle of the ground in disparity. Of course, the big exceptions being San Francisco and Marin, which have pretty high disparity. Central Valley, it's the only valley in the region where every county in the region has worse than average outcomes. It's about mix. Half of the counties have high disparity, half have relatively low. Southern California, only region where all the counties have lower than average disparity, but frankly, that's because a lot of them have really low outcomes overall, right? Exceptions being Orange and San Diego counties. All right, Marin, right? Up here in the top right, really well on outcomes, better from 1 to 3 on disparity, but of course there's more room to grow, so let's dive into what that might look like. On our website, the link is in the agenda, you can actually pull up specifically some data on Marin. This is a couple screenshots of what you would find there. You can get a rough snapshot of the demographics, a map of what it looks like, some key takeaways, including what racial group in the county is experiencing the highest level of disparity, what indicator is the most disparate, and what indicator has the worst outcomes. Perhaps not surprisingly, they're both housing indicators. You can see on the bottom of our slide here, for each issue, where does it fall within the 4 quadrants? A couple things to point out. Marin has higher than average disparity in crime and justice, economic opportunity, health access, and housing. You can even do a bit of a deeper dive on disparity for each one of these and see where is it really falling. In fact, Marin is in the highest disparity category for housing, health access, and crime and justice. I was asked to focus on education and economic opportunity, so I'm going to do that. Education, this is our education index, right? So just looking across our education indicators, Marin doing really well with outcomes, middle of the pack on disparity, right? Ranked 30th. You're actually in the purple category. Again, that doesn't mean that disparities don't exist. We'll see that in a second. When you look at the 7 indicators within our education issue area, there are 3 indicators that show up as higher than average disparity. 3rd grade English proficiency, 3rd grade math proficiency, and ECE access. So I'm going to focus on those 3. Looking at English proficiency, you see 58% of Marin students are proficient in English and language arts, the highest rate being the Asian and white students, both at 76%. But contrast that with the Black and Latinx students in the county, where it's 13% and 25% respectively, right? Almost, 5 times less than this county average for Black students. You have a very similar pattern for proficiency in mathematics, right? Overall, pretty well, 60%. Highest rates for Asian and white students, around 79 and 77% respectively. But again, Black and Latinx students falling behind at 17% and 28% respectively. Access to ECE, these are children 0 to 5 enrolled in licensed ECE programs. This is a little bit more nuanced, right? Overall, 56.5% of children 0 to 5 are enrolled. You see there's a good number of folks kind of hovering around the midpoint. Youth, or Latinx or other race a little bit below. Oddly enough, you see the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander youth having the highest rate at 83%. I would encourage you all to look into that, see why they're doing so well. What can we learn from that community, right? That's a very interesting bright spot. I think it's worth exploring. How do we get the rest of our youth to be closer to that percentage? Turning to economic opportunity, this is our overall index. Again, Marin hovering towards the top, ranked 2nd in our economic opportunity index. Disparity 22nd, a little bit worse. You are in the orange, so higher than average disparity category. When you look at the specific indicators, the 2 that stand out as higher than average disparity are cost of living adjusted poverty and per capita income. So we'll look into those. This is cost of living adjusted poverty. Overall, as a county, 75% of your residents are past that threshold. The highest rate, of course, being white, 81%, compared to Latinx at 30%. Right? So Latinx residents are, less than half of the county average living or passing the poverty threshold. Right? So you can see a stark inequity there. Similarly, with per capita income, we have more data so you can get a better breakdown by race. For the county, per capita income's at around 79,000, highest being among white residents at 92,500, right? Compare that to the lowest American Indian Alaskan Native, which is 21,500. Folks who have other race, 24,000. Latinx residents, 35,000, right? So you could see the stark, it's like one of the worst slopes down, right, you could see. So what can we do to help address these inequities in that community? So I like to think of this as, this is kind of us trying to find the pump, right? What are the different indicators, things that we might want to focus on? Now let's talk about, well, what is our version of removing the handle of that pump? What can we do? These are some high-level recommendations. I wanted to be the first thing to say, I should not be giving you recommendations. Let's talk to these folks. The folks who are most impacted by the problem should be the ones identifying the solutions. So I wouldn't mind it if you forget everything I said here. It should just be like, find the people in your community and talk about what they believe the solution should be. But I was asked to provide some recommendations, so I'll go ahead and take it anyway. Within the education space, you can explore community schools, which are schools that engage community partnerships with CBOs, share decision-making with parents, with students to improve the education experience. How do you provide resources to high-need schools and high-need resources? Or students, how do you target those resource distributions? How do you promote access and investments in ECE to help address those ECE access inequities? Economic opportunity, guaranteed basic income. How do we make sure folks have the resources they need to get by and meet their needs? How do we expand safety net programs for the folks who are living in poverty? Of course, I didn't talk about housing, but it's one of the highest disparity issues in Marin. You don't need me to tell you that. That's a big economic opportunity impact, right? If all the money you make goes straight to housing, we're not going to make a difference. So we have to address the housing affordability crisis. And the last thing I'll say is criminal justice and healthcare access. Those are some of the highest disparity issues in Marin County according to our data. So I know you all may not necessarily work in that space, but you should try or talk to folks who do. All these issues interrelate with each other and impact the lives of children. So we need to kind of break out beyond like focus on a single issue and try to address where we see disparities in our communities. So just a call to action, start talking to folks working in criminal justice, start talking to folks in healthcare access, and try to address the issues that are leading to disparities in your community. I'll leave it at that. I don't know if we'll have time for questions. If not, here's my email address. I'll be around today. Give me a call, send me an email. I'm happy to talk more. Thank you. We're good? Oh, okay. I think we have time for a couple questions. Yes.
So does Catalyst and Race Counts have plans to show data focused by zip code?
Zip code. Yeah, so one of the things that we're constantly trying to do is to get more granular data, right? For a long time, we only had data by county. Now we have data by city. So we would love to get to the point where we could get to zip code, maybe census tract. It's just like a progress. Resources permitted, time and energy permitted, we'd love to do that. Right now, we only have it at county and city. We're also looking to maybe be able to cut data by state legislative district so that folks can say, hey, they can go to their state representative, here's what it looks like in your district. So we have plans to eventually get to more and more granular data. Yeah.
But, having that honest conversation about making recommendations and having those changes really have to do with us focusing where it really does count.
Mm-hmm.
Zip codes. And that way we can have a little bit more of, sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
And I asked that question because typically if we look by zip codes, which is something that we haven't really been honest about speaking about consistently, is if we look at those zip codes, we're really going to see where we need to make those changes.
Exactly.
And a lot of times counties don't want to look at that data point because it makes this conversation very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But that's what we should be doing in order for us to be better at what we do.
Yeah,
So
I
that's why asked that
completely agree. So if you think the Jon Snow example, he had very granular data. I only presented county level. It's probably too broad to be helpful in a lot of ways. So the more granular, the more specific we can get, the better. If you're interested in that, you can connect with us. We could try to see if we could have some data at that level. It won't be for all indicators, but we could explore that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I have to stand up? Okay. So when you mentioned some of the ways that we can try to counteract the diversity disparity and the issues here, one of those things was about the community schools. And so that's a good idea, but that seems like that's like outside funding and outside sourcing. Right. And what are we going to do to change the actual structural issues that are happening in the educational system to cause that disparity instead of, going from the outside, paying taxes and things like that? The people who live in this county should be having equal access to equal types of education.
Yeah.
How are we addressing that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is kind of a process answer. I think it would be about bringing in the folks who are impacted by those inequities and having a real honest conversation about what their lived experiences are and what they feel, what barriers are they facing, what challenges are they experiencing, and having a conversation around what they feel could be the solutions to the issues that they're experiencing, right? So I think it's a lot about having an honest conversation and talking about real honest solutions with the folks that are experiencing those issues. So that would be, it's processy. I wouldn't know where that leads to, but they're the ones that should be thinking through what the path forward is.
Okay, one more before we go on. Just way in the back. I'll get you after.
Me first?
Go ahead, you're first.
Okay. I can't, it's kind of difficult here. But one of the things that we always ran into, and I've ran into since I've been working in Marin City for about 25, 30 years, is how do you measure equity? Everybody has a definition of what equity is, from economics to social justice to everything. But I have not seen, race count addressed how do you measure equity between organizations to deliver services, community organizations, equity between community organizations, equity within the county itself. And what I mean by measuring is looking at the values, the opportunities that create equity within a system that you can feed back to everybody so they know that the leadership is doing equity work and you can feel the results through measurements. I hope you get to that sometime today.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's what this kind of space is meant for, right? Is for you all to have discussions around what your institutions, your organizations are doing to advance equity. So,
okay, last one, and then we will have time for more comments after our next presentation.
Thank you for the presentation. I know you were asked to focus on education and the indicators that you presented, but one of your recommendations was about increasing access or increasing services to low-income communities.
Yeah.
Does your data set show that Marin, relative to other counties, is performing poorly there?
No, so that recommendation was more around if you think about, the low per capita income for communities, right? If you think about the high levels of poverty that you're seeing, how do you support those folks? So it's really about how do we get resources and provide services to the folks who are living in poverty and have relatively low income. I don't have specific information about what Marin County's actually doing, so hopefully part of this conversation could be about what services is Marin County providing, how are you all supporting low-income individuals? That's kind of needed for further information. This is just based off of the data that we see here.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
To me, the most heartbreaking numbers are the third grade numbers. So, both for math and for reading.
Can we give it up one more time for Matt, everybody? What a beautiful room. How are we doing today, everybody? Good. Pretty good? I so appreciate you all coming out here today and spending some time with us to talk about racial equity in the county of Marin. For those who don't know me, my name is Jamila Jordan, and I'm the director of our Office of Equity. And just want to start by thanking our friends over at First 5 Marin for being our partners and putting this event on. Let's give them some love here today. I want to, in particular, thank both Maria and Michelle for all the behind the scenes that goes into making something like this happen here today. And without further ado, everybody, I want to just go ahead and get into it. We have lots that we want to cover with you, and so let's get started. I want to frame my comments by talking about people, power, and place. And in particular, I'm going to focus my remarks on our Race Equity Action Plan and what we're doing to address some of those disparities that Matt spoke so beautifully about just a moment ago. But before that, I want to focus on people. And I want to start by just giving some love to our small but very mighty Office of Equity team. Can I get my folks to stand up? Can I get my folks to stand up? I'm talking to you. They know who they are. They know who they are. All right. So all the things that we're going to cover here today, you might see me out in front, but it's a team. It takes all of us to move this work. And so I'm deeply appreciative of all of their support on this journey. So what is equity? I heard Ricardo just a moment ago say there's so many definitions that we have. People talk about it as a buzzword. It's kind of the topic du jour for a lot of communities now. And I often like to start these conversations by just inquiring, what do people think? What is equity? Can we have a shared definition, a shared sense of vocabulary around what this is? Does anybody want to be a brave soul and just shout out, what do you think? What is equity to you? Yes.
Equity is people getting what they need in order to create equitable outcomes for all people.
Right on. I put a ringer in the audience here in case you were wondering. Let's go over here. Just plain justice. Giving people what they need when they need it, and just plain justice. Any other brave souls out here? Miss Ida, I'm looking at you. What do you think?
Look at me, okay? It's being able to look over the fence at the same level.
Looking over the fence. I know we've seen those graphics. Dr. Estes.
I'm going to take it a step further over looking over the fence, but being able to sit in the stands wherever you want to sit with whatever food you want to eat, because I really don't like that image, but like equity is really being able to have access to what you need, but also what you want to be able to thrive.
Not just what you need, but what you want. I saw a hand over here. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, so she said equity is about, and I'm going to paraphrase here, where basically I'm working myself out of a job. You don't need an Office of Equity. You don't need an equity director. We're at a point where we have achieved a level of existence where no matter what you look like, your race, your ethnicity, your gender, your sexual orientation, those are not predictors of your life outcome. So I'm paraphrasing, but that is what I heard her say. We'll take a couple more. I'm going to go to my friend in the back there. Sir, yes.
Yeah, equity is to listen to people what they need, not giving what they need. Especially people with different cultures. You have to understand their culture.
Yes, don't tell me what I need. I tell you. He said equity is about listening to what people need and responding accordingly. You're going to be our last one.
I would also add that in order to do equity, you got to realize that people have different starting points, and understanding that and accepting that. Like, that is what needs to be at the forefront to understand where equity even needs to come in. So realizing that people have different starting points.
Yes.
And giving them what they need to be on the level playing field.
Absolutely. It's a sad but true reality that we're not all starting at the same place in this country. And so we have to adjust and provide people with the resources, the support that they need in order to thrive, right? So I appreciate everybody diving into this with me here today. I'm going to go ahead and share what we consider to be the Office of Equity's definition. Okay, thank you for that. So we define equity as the just and fair inclusion into society where everyone can participate, they can prosper and they can reach their full potential. And this is from our friends over at Policy Link as well. Another way to think about it, everyone, is that it's both process and outcomes. Right? It's a process. And today I'm going to talk to you about the process that we went through our Race Equity Action Plan that ultimately will lead us to different outcomes, which speaks to more about what Matt was sharing with us today. But I want to start by just providing some more data, some more context for everyone here, okay? And this is something that our friends over at Health and Human Services have put together. And I think it's so important for us to, in order for us to close gaps, we have to see them first, right? We have to see them. And so we rely on data to help us do that. And life expectancy in Marin County is something that we feel very proud about. We have one of the largest or longest life expectancies in all of California and frankly in all of the country. And but we also know that this isn't necessarily the case for everyone in Marin County. And so what you see here on this graphic, everybody, is we see one of the highest or the longest levels of life expectancy by our friends over in Ross, right? About 91 years. That's a long time to live, right? And then when that's compared to our friends and family in Marin City, we see it's about 77 years. That's a 15-year difference, everybody. 15 years of life that is stolen, that is robbed, that I'm not generating generational wealth, that I'm not around to support my family, to support my kids, that I'm not around to improve my legacy, right? All of these things matter when we think about life course, our lifespan and what we can accomplish. And so this is something that's so important for us to keep in mind because the data can often point us in the direction of the strategies that we want to put together to address them, okay? So Matt spoke beautifully, as I mentioned, around we know what the data is telling us, that we're the third most racially disparate county in all of California. And that's not something that we're proud of. That's not a list that we want to be at the top of. Right? So how are we going to address that? We also know that the pandemic exacerbated these racial disparities. For some people, it pulled back the curtain as to how people have been faring in this county and in this country. For others, it was as if we already knew this. This has been common knowledge. But yet we needed people to be dying in the streets. We needed the highest vaccination rates. We needed all these things to happen for us to get serious about it. But what I am proud of, though, is that we now have a renewed sense of urgency around these issues, a renewed sense of accountability around these issues, given the numbers, given what the data is telling us. And so, in the words of the brilliant James Baldwin, nothing, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And I think this is something that's so important for us to be explicit about naming race as something that we need to consider as we think of solutions to these challenges that we're facing. We have to name it, we have to say it, because until we do it, until we take a hard look at that data that Matt shared with us, until we take a hard look at that 15-year difference, we can proceed as if nothing is changing, as if it doesn't matter, but we know that's not the case. So race counts, everybody. Race matters. We know that there are some troubling disparities along racial and ethnic lines when we think about life expectancy, we think about graduation rates, incarceration rates, the quality of your air that you breathe in your community, right? The quality of your water. Race matters in this country. And I just want to let that simmer for a minute. We also know that disparities they're created, they're maintained through policies, through decisions, through our budget allocations, right? So we know that we have this challenge, and yet we are, in some cases inadvertently, but in some cases willfully doing things that will perpetuate these inequities. And so it's important that we focus on closing these gaps. And we have to do so by leading with race, by being race forward. Because what we found, everybody, is that these ideas about colorblind solutions, right, that doesn't work. Colorblind society, that doesn't work. That doesn't address that 15-year life expectancy difference, right? So we have to be specific in the solutions that we've come up with. And so I'm excited to share with you a little bit about that specificity that we've been diving into here in Marin County. Because what we know to be true is that when we lead with race, we get better outcomes for everyone, right? And that's really powerful, everybody. So sometimes people ask me, well, Jamila, well, why do we still lead with race? Why is this important for us to do? I've just given you a number of reasons as to why. But I'd like to reframe that and instead say it's race and. We're taking an intersectional approach. It's race and gender. We're living in Marin County here. We have a really strong contingent of mature seniors, of elders in this community. They say, well, why not lead with age, Jamila? It's race and age, right? Disability, it's race and disability status, okay? So it's important that we shift our context and our framework for how we deal with these issues in this county. And we take an intersectional approach where we look holistically across all of these different identities in order for all boats to rise in this county. So I want to get right into our planning process, everybody. We have been working over the last few years to put together a race equity action plan, and the board allocated $1.7 million for us to implement this plan, to guide recommendations as to how we see fit to close those gaps that I talked to you about. And so one of the first things that we did is we led with community. We rooted this process in community. I heard Dr. Garcia say just so beautifully a moment ago that we need to talk directly to the people who are at the margins of our systems, designing to the margins. And so that's what we did. We put together this race equity planning committee. I got some of my family in the house here today. Can I get you all to raise your hand here? Ricardo, I see you. Ms. Locks, I see you. These are the people who have been a part of championing this work. Our youngest person was under 17. Our oldest was over 80. People of different ethnicities, different lived experiences came together to help us develop this plan, to put this together. So that was the first phase of the work, right? That was phase one. And they did a beautiful job of coming up with some recommendations and ideas. And the next stage was for us to then say, well, now how do we implement this? How do we make it real? How do we take it from an idea to an action? Right? And so what we did, everybody, is we put together a cross-sectoral team. We had not only community members who have been a part of this, but we also had our nonprofit partners, right? We looked at folks like Community Action Marin, Legal Aid of Marin, the Workforce Alliance of the North Bay, Play Marin, right? We really rallied around our community-based organizations to be a part of this. And then we looked across our jurisdictions. The city of San Rafael, I know we got the mayor in the house here today. We looked at Novato, invited them to the table. We had our county partners as well, and all of them came together in the spirit of really making an implementation strategy. And so we landed on 3 core pillars, everybody: economic opportunity, mental health, and housing. And we could have had a laundry list of other topics that we wanted to cover, but we didn't want to dilute our impact. We wanted to focus in, where could we have the greatest impact possible? And so we invited these folks to come together and to think about, how do we want to use that $1.7 million to advance these strategies? What you see here is just a high-level snapshot of all that's included in that implementation strategy. I know you've read it cover to cover already, but I'm going to go ahead and just share a few ideas that are included in that document. The first one is around lifting the minimum wage in this community. Right? I want to just give a quick shout out to my friend and colleague, Raisa De La Rosa, who is leading our Economic Vitality Strategic Plan. If you want to talk about minimum wage, Raisa is the person to talk to about this, okay? Yeah, give her some love on that, everybody. Raising the minimum wage is something that's so incredibly important. We also heard directly from community members about the importance of supporting micro business, micro enterprises, right? We have so many talented folks in this community, right, who want to start their own businesses, who want to take them to scale, but they need some support to do that. So we're launching a whole new micro-food business, micro-food, but also just micro-business in general, enterprise program to support them, technical assistance, permitting, the ins and outs of building capital up to finance your ideas, right? So that's the economic opportunity pillar. We wanted to pivot as well to mental health. Right? So much has been talked about around how our children, and frankly, all of us have been struggling, right? And so what do we do to provide specific resources to communities so that they can operate in not only economic prosperity, but mental wellness? So one of the things that the group sought to do is to provide funding and support to support licensure for people to become therapists, and particularly therapists of color. And I don't know if anyone in the room here goes to therapy or not. I highly recommend it if you don't. But it's so important to have a therapist who looks like you sometimes, right? And we found in Marin that doesn't necessarily exist to the degree that we want it to. And so we want to be a part of supporting that pipeline of therapists of color to support our folks of color here who want to access the incredibly important mental health resources. Another thing that this group came up with was around culturally responsive, trauma-informed peer support. You may not have a therapist, but you have a friend who you can talk to. You have a peer, you have a neighbor, and we want them to be equipped with the necessary skills, knowledge, and resources to support you. The last one I want to talk to you about, everybody, is housing. And this is something that is, it's not unique to Marin. It's something that we're all grappling with here across the region. In the Bay Area, really across the state, across the country. And so we've looked to our neighbors. We've asked them, what are you doing to address these issues? And so we did this landscape analysis of the work, and we came up with a few ideas, came up with a few suggestions that we want to implement. One of them is increasing tenant protections, right? It's about pathways to not only home ownership, but being able to stay in this community, being able to afford to even rent in Marin is quite expensive for a lot of people. I see a lot of heads nodding on that. I don't know what your rent to income burden is, but it seems heavy, right? It seems like a lot here in this community. So how can we implement rent control, rent stabilization, so people can stay here if that's what they choose to do? The other thing that we talked about is pathways to home ownership. Right? So this really exciting idea around community land trust, which has been bubbling up for many years in Marin County, but we have some real momentum around this. I see Liz Darby in the house here today, who's leading some of that work for our community development agency as well. And so this is another opportunity for us to provide affordable housing options for people who want to raise a family, to make this place their home. So again, this is a snapshot, everybody, of some of the great recommendations that are in that plan. But I want to pivot now, just briefly, into this data conversation. Because what we found is that we really need to have that baseline. And so we've worked really closely with our partners at Health and Human Services, and I see a lot of them in the room here today as well. And we wanted to start to understand, where are we as it relates to a baseline? And how can we then build on that? And so they've put together this dynamic platform here that allows us to have a common understanding of how we're faring in Marin County, but at a really granular level, at the census tract level, right? And that'll help us guide strategy and track, to Ricardo's question and comment a moment ago, how are we making progress? How are we moving the needle around this? And then perhaps more importantly, how can we develop place-based solutions to these challenges that are community-centered? So I encourage you all to check out this Health Equity Zone dashboard. We're going to continue to add to it. This is a resource. It's all about democratizing data. We want this to be something that all of you use as you put together your grant applications, as you think about your strategy for your organization when you want to advance racial equity. This is a great source to have some baseline data. And then the last thing I'll say here, everybody, is around next steps. It's around accountability. And this is something that our Race Equity Action Plan, our team that put that together, we thought a long and hard way about that. Because I think there's been so many promises that have been made. I think people are frankly tired of sharing their opinion about certain things. It's like, we've already told you what the issue is. What are you going to do about it? And so accountability is something that we really centered in this planning process. So one thing we're going to do is continue to engage and reach out to our partners. We want all of you to be abreast as to what changes are happening and how you can be a part of it. We also want to build out accountability structures. What does that look like? These are new things that we're building from scratch, okay? And so how do we do it in a way that's different, that's equity-centered? So we're building out these new ways of holding ourselves accountable as a county. We're also breaking down silos. I called out my friends in the room, my colleagues in the room, because we're working together on this. It's not just the small and mighty Office of Equity team, but it's all of us working together to break down and dismantle these barriers through really deep collaboration. And we're going to revisit this. We're going to come back and say, how are we doing? How are we doing with this? I'm sorry, sir. I'm in the middle of it. I'm sorry, sir. Yeah, I'm sorry, sir.
Emergency. I need the Chevy Tahoe or the Honda that's blocking that bus moved right now.
Chevy Tahoe. Okay, gotcha. Chevy Tahoe. If you're blocking anyone who has a Chevy Tahoe, please go ahead and. Okay, I think we got it figured out. We're working on it. Okay. All right. Important news breaking announcement there. Okay. You never know in these settings who has something to say, okay? We're just gonna roll with it. We're gonna roll with it. Let's give it up. We're gonna roll with it. I'm gonna wrap up here, everybody, because we got you. Breathe it in, all right? I'm gonna keep us pushing here though. But I want to close just by sharing a few other things. So I mentioned our Race Equity Action Plan, everyone, but I also want to highlight some of the other really great and important work being done in this county to advance racial equity. One of them is the release of the resolution around racism as a public health crisis. Okay, clap it up for that, clap it up for that. Right? So we are making tangible inroads on implementing that resolution as we speak. Another is our participatory budgeting process, where we ask community members, clap it up for PB, come on now. We asked community members, we said, how would you spend $2.5 million to advance racial equity? And the ideas were beautiful, so creative, so inspiring. We now are moving into doling out money, $10,000 to $250,000 grants to community members just like you to advance equity from wherever you sit, from your community, from your organization, right? I'm so inspired and excited about that. The other that I want to call your attention to is our Race Equity Budget Tool, where we're working with our departments to rethink the way we give out our money. How are we spending our dollars? Where are we investing our dollars, right? This is a game changer, everybody. You talk about race equity, you talk about money. Where are we spending our money, okay? And then I just want to quickly, I'll close it with this. Let's talk about some of our other departments, right? It takes all of us to do this work. And it is challenging, to Dr. Garcia's point. It is hard work. And so we need partners, we need allies. So I want to just call out quickly, we have the library team, the Marin County Free Library here, who just put out, yeah, give them some love. That's right. Who just put out their strategic plan for anti-racism and equity. That's unheard of for a library to do such a thing. We have our Health and Human Services, the largest department in the county, the largest department. So if you want to make change in the county, you need them as a partner, right? They're putting out an equity roadmap to think through how can they be even more sharp in the way they approach dismantling these disparities that exist in our county. The last one I'll call your attention to is Digital Marin, okay? The internet is our lifeline. It's so fundamental. It's almost like water and electricity these days, right? But we know that some of our higher income communities have high-speed internet, and our lower income communities, nearly 40% are dealing with the bare bones of internet speed, right? You can't do your homework, you can't telework. So they're installing this new plan to address that, right? How do we bridge that digital divide? So these are just a snapshot, everybody. I wanted to share these with you to inspire you to know that the county is working. And oftentimes, and I just want to piggyback for a moment on Dr. Garcia's comment, we can often hear from naysayers in the room, people who want to critique all day, every day. That's fine. But we also know we're working over here. Okay? And we invite you to be in this journey with us. We invite you to be our partners, our allies, our co-conspirators, because that's what's going to make the change that's necessary. So with that, everybody, I'm going to close this out. I'm excited to invite our next panel up. I'll take a couple of quick questions, but I am going to go ahead and move us through here. So let me see. I'm going to invite Michelle to come around here with the microphone. I'm going to start with my friend. And Michelle, I don't want to make you work too hard, but the gentleman in the back.
In the back. We'll navigate the labyrinth as usual.
The labyrinth, dun dun dun. Think of a question. We got a question. We got a little time or two. Okay, yes, sir.
The biggest problem we have is Health and Human Services does not cooperate properly. It doesn't put out proper information. It's in collaboration with Kaiser, who does not provide Health and Human Services for the disabled and their patients. They don't put them into a proper hospital. They put them into convalescent homes for convenient health services. And how many people die in convalescent homes? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, sir. I see Michelle. Michelle, can we go to our friend in the back there in the black jacket? And then we'll come to this lady here, Dr. Garcia, towards the front.
Stand up. Thank you for your presentation. I have a question to ask, which is whether you think that equity is a human rights issue.
Absolutely. Equity is a human rights issue. I think it is. I would agree. Thank you for that question. Dr. Garcia?
Hi, my name is Marguerite Moriarty, and I wonder how many people in this room know that the IHSS caregivers up until February 1st were making $16.95 an hour. They got a raise to $1,800. I understand it's a complicated system because it's federal, state, and county, but it's completely an outrage, in my opinion, that caregivers in this county would get $18 an hour to care for the vulnerable. And also, I mean, I happen to know one that, I mean, their benefits are absolutely pitiful. So I have that, and I have a lot of thoughts, and some of them are that if everyone here left this room today and just spoke to their neighbors or walked down the street, we could make maybe just a little dent in this terrible racism in Marin County.
Okay, well said. We're going to take one more. Yes, go ahead there.
For me? Okay, go for it. Oh, do I have to stand? Okay, so my question is about, okay, so we're getting $1.7 million that was allocated through 3 different strategic initiatives for like $566,000 each. So I'm thinking about like all the money that's in Marin and how big this is an issue. And I feel like, you know, we put our money where our heart, you know, your money, you know, your money where your heart is. And it's like, I don't feel like that's where the heart of actually Marin is. Your heart is there, but I don't know if the heart of the people who have the purse strings, if that's where it's there, because I feel like there needs to be a lot more money dumped into this issue than $1.7 million. Make your job a lot easier to, you know, and everybody else's, you know, life easier. So that's my comment.
All right, all right. We might drop the mic on that comment there. I think you said it beautifully. I see one more hand, and I know, Michelle, if you wouldn't mind, I really want to come. Mayor Alicia has been really patient here. I'm going to, yeah, come on over, and then we're going to close this out here, folks. We got a panel that's really exciting for you to get to.
Hi, thank you, Jamila. So as we all seen from the race count report, education and health was 2 of the main disparities in Marin County. And so, as Jamila was saying, accountability is very, very, very important. So they also said that they want to be explicit by calling out and closing the gaps. So the accountability, how are they going to be accountable? By the data? Or, because as we can see from the data that it's so low in Marin City, but they're not calling it out. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Mayor Alicia. Holding ourselves accountable. How do we do that? Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, listen, everybody, that's my time. I want to go ahead and invite our next panel to come on up to the stage here. And let's have them come on up here. Let's give them a round of applause as they make their way up.
And let's keep that applause going for Jamila and her team. Thank you so much for your presentation and your great work. We deeply appreciate your work here on behalf of the county.
Just anywhere you want, anywhere you want. Come on up, anywhere you'd like, ladies. All right, everybody. It is my sincere pleasure to introduce this esteemed group of panelists. You know, it's a small world, this equity world, this group of equity practitioners. And so I just pulled out my phone and I said, I need you all to come out and talk to these folks about what you're doing in your jurisdictions to advance racial equity. Sometimes in Marin, there's this sense of terminal uniqueness that we are so special and so different, and in some ways we are. And yet, we can often learn so much from other communities that are grappling with these same issues, challenges, and opportunities. So these are the folks who are going to share their knowledge and wisdom with you. I'm going to do some brief intros, and then we're going to get right into it, all right? So the first person I'd like to introduce is Dr. Larissa Estes. And Dr. Estes is the executive director of the newly formed Racial Equity Commission that was established through executive order. This is major, everybody. This is major. Our next guest that I am so excited to introduce is Jackie Larenzar, who is the racial equity analyst for the City of Oakland's Department of Race and Equity. Jackie is a long-time racial equity professional, practitioner, and just so excited for her to share her knowledge and wisdom with you today. And last but not least, I'm excited to introduce my friend and colleague, Shireen Malafkasali, who is a leader of advancing equity with over 20 years of experience across issues in government, nonprofit, and philanthropic sectors. Let's give them another round of applause, everybody. All right, so we have a couple of prepared questions for this group, and then we might have a little bit of time for you all to ask some questions as well. I'm gonna go ahead and get us kicked off. I wanted to get right into the heart of it, okay? No holds barred. We have to name it, we have to face it. And so one of the things that we've seen in this country, everybody, is we've seen a real backlash against equity work, in particular racial equity work. And we've seen this in both our educational spaces. You look across colleges, schools, institutions, as well as government, right? And it seems like we had made so much progress, and now we're being faced with a little bit of a whiplash, if you will. And I wanted to invite this group of esteemed guests here to speak to the fact that, there's been some real concentrated effort to dismantle these systems, to really eliminate these offices of equity, right? To eliminate these programs that exist across the country. So I'm asking them, how are you experiencing this quote unquote whiplash or assault on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? How are you experiencing that in your jurisdiction? And this is a twofer. How are you baking equity into the DNA of your institutions so that we can withstand these shifting tides, right? People may change, but we can bake this into the system. So with that, take it away. Who wants to go first?
I can start since I'm the entire state, the big jurisdiction. Good morning, everyone. It's interesting when you bring up the question about the attack on DEI. Well, we've been dealing with affirmative action challenges since Proposition 209 was implemented. So we've been dealing with this for about 25-ish years.
I'm sorry, Lisa.
Yes.
I'm just noticing all those people over there can't see your lovely self.
Can't
I
see?
wonder if we could move down this way.
I can come up here.
We can come up. Don't touch that. Don't touch that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Go for it. Keep going.
Okay. So we've been challenged as a state already, and there have been many folks that are working hard and have been tirelessly working over the last 20 some odd years to find those ways to address and move through these affirmative action challenges. So we had the backlash in, 1996?
Yes.
That was a long time ago, and we're just only starting to see the other parts of the country. So we actually have a lot of lessons learned that can be shared across the country. I take that and say, with that and what we're seeing and happening particularly within the educational system, one, be mindful they are coming for Brown versus Board of Education. That's 1000% clear. The volume of bills that are being introduced across the country, and if y'all don't know what ALEC is a Republican-facing entity that disseminates template bills across the country, and then that's when you see the population of this state having this bill and another neighboring state having the same bill. It's ALEC, I think is the acronym for it. That's why the work that we are doing here in California and the work that we have been doing for the last 20 plus years becomes even more important. We're going to have to dig our heels into the ground and keep the work moving forward, because they're really, for lack of a better term, gunning for us. and the work that we're doing. So the work of the Racial Equity Commission, which was established by Governor Gavin Newsom through an executive order, is really about looking at how do we institutionalize racial equity strategies through our government systems, whether it's how we are looking and analyzing data, how are we looking at decisions we are making around budget, and even how we are engaging community. And so much of what you're outlining in the REAP, much of what the data that has been shared with us through Race Counts and Catalyst California, all are extremely relevant in helping us continue to keep this work moving forward while the country kind of figures out what it's going to do. And the way that California goes, everybody follows. So part of this is an encouragement that as hard as it is, that we continue to do this work.
Well said, Dr. Assis. Thank you. Shireen.
Is this on? Is this on?
It's
Hi.
on.
Well, first, thank you so much for having us, inviting us here. It's great to see you all. We don't always get to hang out. And it's great to be here in a community forum and hear from all of you about what the work that you're doing. A lot of the work we do is really kind of learning from each other. So Jamila and I, call on each other, ask for advice. There's no reason to recreate the wheel. I think that we're seeing it. Locally. I am from San Mateo County. It's the county just south of San Francisco, just north of Santa Clara County. Our borders are all the way to Pescadero area, all the way into East Palo Alto, and our southern border is Stanford. And we actually have a very similar kind of makeup to Marin County in the sense that we are also in the prosperity for few category that you all are in. In fact, the Brookings Institute names our the two counties we're closest to, or the mega regions, as the first and second most prosperous in the nation out of 56. And then we're also, though, we are 42nd and 54th, no, 46th and 52nd for racial inclusion in that prosperity. So we have a lot of challenges that we're facing that are similar to yours. An hourglass economy that drives housing to the high wage workers, for example. So much of this feels very familiar to me in your action plan. And so we're seeing probably similar things that you're experiencing here, which is every single time I have any solicitation, whether it is for a consultant to help us do a training, whether it's a data analyst, every single time I get a public records request. It's not from somebody else who wants to know. If I put on a webinar, I get a public records request. I get calls to our Board of Supervisor members who are asked a lot of questions. Why is that happening? How much did it cost for you to do a flag raising for Juneteenth? What did you spend on this? Because that's a hook in, but make no mistake, that's all about making it uncomfortable, making it difficult, and showing and weighing your power around. The other thing that we do see, and this is, I would say, even more for our side of the people who do want to see equity happen, but I don't think always know and understand what equity truly means, because the questions they raise are more about, well, I hear you talk a lot about race. I know you say you're not exclusively focused on race, but what about this? And how does that fit in? But I don't think there's people who ask that with true inquiry, and then there's people who ask that with the, hey, you're dividing us by talking at all about disparities. Because we're one human community. And while that sounds like a beautiful, it sounds like people are putting kind of a jab, but then kind of giving you a flower after, like around it, smelling really good, but, shanking you. So I think that's definitely happening. And then as far as building it into the DNA, like I'm working right now on an ordinance. And so, an ordinance on equity is different than a resolution for us, and it matters in different ways in that it becomes a statute, becomes law. And so building it from a directive to staff from the board to actual law on some of the ways in which we operate and work, we're hoping will make a really big difference in the infrastructure and making that part of the structural differences. Other things, to be quite honest, is working on an inclusive democracy. Where and what are those opportunities to build that inclusive democracy? Because that can't go away It's very easily, at least. And that includes things like looking at our boards and commissions. What is the demographic? This is our boards and commissions and governance are supposed to be our citizen voice in informing our decision makers. Some have their own decision making. But who do they look like? What do they represent? How do we ensure that our formal infrastructure is actually shored up and serving its purpose before we start thinking about how do we circumvent those and have these other types of processes that are absolutely necessary? We've got a bunch of other things, but I feel like I'll talk about that at another time. I don't want to pass it on to hear what Oakland's up to.
Could you put up this slide? I just want to show people one slide about the DNA.
Which one you want?
The 58, please.
58?
Yeah. So, like Jamila said, I've been doing this work my whole life, literally. I started doing race work when I was in my teens, and I became a UN delegate. I'm part of the LGBTQ human rights group, and we've been working with the UN to actually do this work at the UN level. So it's all over. This has become worldwide. And it's really amazing to see how what happened in 2020 really influenced the whole world. Everybody around the world that has dark skin really saw themselves on what was happening here in the United States. And people came out in Paris, in Africa, in Mexico, in Colombia, all over the world. It was this scream of we've had enough, and we want businesses and governments to really be accountable to the people that they serve. That's democracy. That's true democracy. So, because I've been doing this work for a long, long time, and my co-partner in this, Darlene Flynn, who's the director of the Department of Race and Equity, has also been doing this for a very long time. We took a little bit of a different approach to do equity work in Oakland. So we decided very strategically to focus in the city, just the institution of the city of Oakland. So for the last 6 years, we've been very quietly, very diligently, and very intentionally working on putting our house in order. And so it all started with an ordinance that was passed in 2015 to set up the department. This was the first department of race and equity anywhere. And I really see the creation of the department as the culmination of over 60 years of community organizing in Oakland. You know, they're legendary. Black Panthers, Brown Berets, indigenous movements, disability rights, all that is in Oakland. And so the community really hold the city accountable to make this happen. So this is where we are at right now. So let me explain this to you. So we had this ordinance that created a municipal code that actually made a mandate for doing equity work in Oakland law. So we have the power to work with all city departments and elected officials to do equity. The ordinance and the municipal code define equity. They also define determinants of equity. And we chose that because there is a lot of research, tons, years of research about what that is in the public health realm. And there is very little disagreement about what are the things that create the conditions for people to have a healthy life and access to opportunity. We have reached agreement on that. So we started there. So those things are actually defined in the municipal code and the ordinance. And those became kind of like divisions for lines of businesses in the city. So we have determinants for economic development, for transportation, for housing, for community development, All those things are spelled out there. So now, the first thing we did when I got here was 2018, so 15, 16, 17, 18, 3 years it took to put all that in place. We did a similar data dive. We worked with the University of New York, the Institute for Local Governments, to try to figure out how we could take a snapshot of racial disparities at the local level. So 6 cities worked with us in doing this. We decided to really center on equity and look at racial disparities. So we selected 72 different indicators of well-being. We disaggregated all that data by racial and ethnic groups. And we looked at who was faring the best in each indicator and who was faring the worst. Then we worked with CUNY to create a logarithm that averaged all those scores, and we got a score for the city. The score that we had in 2018 was 33.5 out of 100. So we had a lot of room to grow on every single indicator that we looked at: homelessness, access to housing. I can even remember all the indicators, but we had themes: economic well-being, health, environment, things like that. Every single one with one. Black folks were the worst, the most impacted, on every single one. White folks were doing the best on every single one. And then there was one, pedestrian deaths. Asian Americans fared the worst on that. Worse than Black folks, worse than Latinos. That was the one outlier there. And we found out pretty quickly why that was, but I'll tell you more about that. So that really set the stage for us to work with all the city departments and the elected officials. And so the first thing we did was, Jamila got to this a little bit. I'll be quick. It's, no, go back. So we really wanted to set equity as a standard for the city. We created a training, we started inviting people to come, but for us, training, reports, everything we do, it's an organizing tool. Mm-hmm. And so the goal was to find people in the city, employees, that were willing to take a risk to advance equity with us.
Yes.
So we found our people, and we gave them tools so they could do this work within their departments. We helped them to create equity teams in every department. We have now teams on every department in the city. We have 24 departments. And every single department has now worked on a project, a policy, or a procedure where they use our racial equity tools to analyze it, make recommendations, and implement them.
Wow. That's amazing, Jackie. Let's give it up for Oakland on that, right?
These are some of the tools that we use. And
yes.
Data, it's very important.
Data. Yes, thank you for that. Inspiring example from the city of Oakland. I'm going to go to our other speakers here to ask another question here. I'm wondering, and maybe Shireen, you can take this one for us first here. What do you see as some of the key ingredients to advancing equity and really catalyzing this transformational change that we seek? And then I also want to follow up on that one quickly is, how are you centering community in San Mateo? This is a community forum, so I know that's what they want to hear about.
Well, I think first, key ingredient is leadership. Mm-hmm. And that leadership looks different across sectors. So this is your leadership, being really critical, having a leader who is not performative about equity, but truly understands equity, has a background in it, and can move the work and can inform the work. Having electeds, city managers, county executives, those are really critical folks as well, to have steady, committed leadership, but also from the community. And that's what we're here just seeing, is all of you showing up on this day. So having community leadership that both pushes us, but also partners with us. And I think that's sort of when it gets to the transformational piece, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but I think a critical piece of the work is to build partnership within government and community. And that means we have to do better by listening and trusting as a government institution, building those long-standing relationships, showing up on what's needed, not just asking when we have a thing to do, but also maybe sometimes asking you a little bit to understand our hands are a little bit tied here. Can we try something else? What else could work? Can we partner together to actually strategize? And I think that's going to take us really far ahead. So there's leadership. There's also partnership, which is that piece I was talking about. And then you know, she started talking about this. I think risk-taking is so important. And I would say probably for most of us practitioners in equity, anything that comes out of our mouth feels like a risk-reward calculation constantly. And that's not easy to live in that space, but it is the truth. And if more leaders could really actually be, especially public leaders, could feel like they could take more risk, be vulnerable in that risk, and maybe that we would not just hold them accountable, but partner with them to understand something, then they might be willing to speak up more. They might be willing to take more, because they're, you know, they might have that positional power, but they often are just like us. They like to build partnerships, feel like they can make progress. And so that can be hard if it just feels like an us against them mentality. It really is like, can we partner so that I can feel okay to take a few risks and you'd catch me? And if I take those risks to make sure we can move this forward, because the idea of changing our systems requires us to change the status quo. And that status quo, that is a long time. That's like a water pathway that's been digging into the ground a long time. It's well worn. And so to move aside from that, you're on rocky ground. And so I think that risk-taking is so important that was mentioned, but that leadership and the partnership that we all play in that constellation together. I'm gonna say something a little bit wild, but I feel like, okay, I've said enough things that, you know, will make you not think I'm totally out there and, you know, just using astrology or something to guide my way in life. But I also think really centering our work on love is absolutely critical for anything for us to have transformational change. If we just think the divisive politics of how we've shown up before is going to move us forward, we're actually going to end up having this forum in 10 years. Your kids will be at this forum. So we do have to find a way to hold ourselves accountable for loving ourselves, loving our community, and then loving those that maybe don't believe the same things as us, so that it's not about me against them, but it's about being hard on systems and being soft on people. So centering community too really holds that space for us of love. And if we do that, I'm going to give you, and I know Jamila asked for specifics, so I'm going to give you, I will speak to 3 specific examples. And it's sort of like on the housing stuff, on the external community things that you all are really focused on here right now. But saying that work that was just talked about is really critical, and we have some of those organizing efforts internally too. But for example, we had a intergovernmental effort that included community leaders focused called Home for All. And what we did was bring city leaders together, elected officials, and really looked at a lot of our problem was around the not in my backyard. I don't want density. We don't want that community. We don't want that mental health housing. Even if those people seemed like they were often in the right spaces, when it came to their community, it became a different story. So we really did more of a kind of a communication stakeholder engagement campaign. And that really helped out to soften, sort of oil the wheels for some of those policies that came later. We have right now, I'm leading a shared prosperity coordinating a council, looking at how do we move from where we were in making collective community decisions around the $74 million for recovery from COVID into how do we move it from stabilizing our communities to mobilizing our communities? How do we get them to be moving up, self-sustaining? And so we're doing a lot of collective community work around that, that's about building a shared vision, a little bit similar to what you all are doing there. So I'll give those as specific examples.
Beautiful, beautiful. What was it, Shireen? It was hard on systems, but soft on people. Yeah, Dr. Estes.
I would just add that this is a long journey, and the importance of giving ourselves and each other grace in this journey. This is really, really hard work, and this idea of taking risks, anything that comes out of our mouths is extremely risky. And I don't know how you all feel, but I know I walk through every day thinking I might lose my job. That's a very real thing, particularly for women of color. We have seen how they have attacked, particularly Black women in academic settings. And that's a very real thing that I move through the world in, and I don't know if that's your experiences as well.
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
Lord. And that's why grace is really, really important. It is the reaching the 1, the 2, the 3 folks in a day or in a week or in a month that gets them to center themselves and think about the impact on their heart and in their mind. Because that's we can do all the policy change, we could do all the changes in the practices, we could work across systems, but if you're not shifting hearts and minds as part of this process and giving yourselves grace in that, we're going to be back here in 10 years. So really give yourselves grace in this space as you move this work forward. And I also want to encourage the use of qualitative data and storytelling. I love the data presentation that Matt gave, but it often takes time to get to that point of actually having data to be able to tell, that level of data, to be able to tell a story for a county, a zip code, a census tract. But when you're out talking to people, sharing your own experiences and learning their stories and taking that data and sharing it back out, that's what shifts your heart and your mind and actually starts to show the commonality of the human right that equity is.
Well said. All right. Yes, good stuff. So we're going to do one more question.
Can I just add one thing quickly?
You go for it, Jackie.
Well, we truly believe in this in Oakland, that to be in this work for the long term, to really change this world, to be fair and just, we need to take care of ourselves, right? I love Audre Lorde quote that taking care of myself is the most revolutionary act ever. It's true, especially for people of color, because we've been socialized, if you're a woman of color, double whammy, but we've been socialized to take care of others. And so it is truly revolutionary to do self-care. And do not feel guilty, because if you do take care of yourself, you will change the world. So that's part of our model. We once every quarter we hold a self-care workshop for our folks, and that's all we do. We take care of each other. That's love. And if we want to see a world where love is a reality, that's where we need to start, really take care of it.
Yes. Yes. Self-care. Thank you for that, Jackie. So we're going to wrap up with this question here. And Dr. Estes got us kicked off a little bit already. But, some of these systems that we're operating within are a function of design, right? The system is designed to achieve what it's achieving, right? These outcomes are not random, they're not inevitable, and they're not natural, right? So we can change them. But it takes a lot of work. And there is no waving of a magic wand and suddenly the system is different. Although that may be what we want to have happen. I feel the urgency from all of you. I feel the desire for accountability, for change. But I also think it's so important that we have a little grace and space. And so I want to ask this panel here about expectations And so the question before you is, how do you all go about setting expectations for achieving the transformational change that will lead to equity for everyone?
I'm a systems change expert. I spend way too much time in my life studying this, but what I tell people is that institutions have a life cycle, like we do, and they're at the end of their life cycle right now. It's 50 years. So all the systems that we live in right now, and this is part of this backlash and all the context, is our institutions need to evolve. We need to take this opportunity to change those systems into what we want. So instead of feeling like we're fighting against it, just adjust that narrative a little and look at it as an opportunity to change. So now, with the risk, you need to see where the opportunity is, right? Never let a crisis go untouched. A crisis is an opportunity. A crisis is a pathway for you to apply equity. So take it. And the way we set the expectation is we tell people, start where you can, and then build on that. It doesn't matter if it's a tiny little project or a tiny little policy, do it. And then that success will bring more success, and be very loud about it. Celebrate, and show it to the world. And then you can build on it.
Yes,
Yeah, I would add that there are a tremendous amount of assets within our communities. And understanding what our assets are and how do you leverage and build upon those assets are really important. One thing that we're starting off with the state is we have really no concept of who's doing what racial equity work. Nobody knows. And what we're doing is actually an asset analysis, understanding what are our assets within state government, who's doing what are their lessons learned, are there things that we can learn even from local governments and communities, as well as the private sector and nonprofits, so that we can pull that information and really understand what are best practices, what could be scaled statewide, what are the nuances that we need to be mindful for so that communities can adapt and adopt content. And so it's understanding what your community assets are is a really important first step, because there is so much power. I don't know if there is so much power in this room. And the organizations you represent, the neighborhoods you come from, there is power in that. And there is power that drives that transformation that Jackie was just sharing. But it has to come from you all. And we talk about our hands often being tied, being in government structures where somebody messed something up 20 some odd years ago, a policy was created that then creates inequity. Like, I can't even cover the cost of community members coming to an event. I can't pay their stipends, I can't pay travel costs, I can't pay childcare, I can't even give them food. So what do? I find the workaround. I find that community partner that can receive money and make it happen. But those are the kind of workarounds that we're having to do, but that's an asset. And each and every one of you in this room is an asset behind that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shireen, take us on home.
Okay. Well, I'll say that just to answer the question on setting expectations, it's just really hard. People have been waiting a very long time for our positions, for equity to mean something, and it feels like it's time to deliver. And boy, no one else wants this more than we do. I mean, that's why we are, we're in this grind. That usually, to be quite honest, not a lot of people are happy with you, because on the inside, when you're trying to change the status quo, you're moving way too fast and doing way too much. And the community's like, you're not doing enough, and it's too slow. So you're kind of in this space, walking the tightrope, trying to keep it together. And so the expectations are hard, and they're very justified. So I say that. At the same time, I think that partnership is so critical. I mean, I saw you put 4 people up there. Okay, I saw you put 4 people up there, and I know that project you just shared is not the only thing you're doing. And it's not the only thing your staff's doing. There is so much work. And if we're going to even come close to maintaining the kind of great folks like Jamila and her staff here, we need to give more than grace. We need to give time. We need to give resources and also support. Like on this, the community foundations have been great about, we'll supplement, we'll bring food, even food for your staff, which we can't provide, right? Or things like that. So where can you fill in those gaps? For me, I'll say the most critical thing that I did, I was the first chief equity officer for our county 2.5 years ago. The very first thing I did was, one, develop a memo for my boss saying what this role was and what it wasn't. So that was expectations with my boss. And then I went to the community and say, hey, here's a draft of my theory of change. Here's what it looks like, I think, for us to get from here to there, getting to those systems changes, because I could be one of, a voice for you all, but where my power lies is being in the system. I'm the one in the system, and I've got the flashlight looking around, inspecting, okay, this foundation's broke here, this pillar's strong here. So if we can build that partnership for that systems change, we're gonna have multiple layers of outcomes on the other end. So I laid that out, I got feedback, a lot of feedback through lots of forums and commission conversations, and is this the right theory of change? Is this the right infrastructure to build? Is this the right definition? We actually use the same definition. I worked at Policy Link before I came to the county for like 8 years or something. So I think setting up the foundation and recognizing how we're gonna go from A to B to C to D, because if we're going to focus on special initiative after special initiative, we're gonna be just repeating what every other kind of government institution does. Equity is not a special initiative. It is about recognizing that we are making a different decision. Government is saying you can't have good government without proactively advancing equity. Holding the line on discrimination is no longer the threshold, and that's a big difference.
Let's give it up. Oh, we got one more? Okay, just real quick.
I just want to share this with you guys because we got in Oakland, we're in this moment so the city's changing. But we had this moment in a community meeting where the community leaders realized that they also need now to shift because they got what they wanted for the city. But now they don't know how to be with the city because they've been fighting for 60 years, telling the city what to do. And now that we're doing it, they don't know how to be with us. So we're having those conversations now. Like, Sahod, what does that relationship look like now? What do we need to change so we can keep building on that momentum? And the work in the community is different from the work internally. And so we don't even, this is what we tell them, we are not ever going to tell you what to do in community because that is not what we're here to do. We're here to change the city. That's our work, but we need your guidance. We need your input. We need your voices. We need your votes. We need you be very active. So we have a North Star to keep pushing the institution to change. And so having that moment, creating that space for you guys to start thinking about that. So when you start seeing Marin County and the state to deliver things, think, okay, how do I support these people? What do I need to do now to keep this momentum going? What can my community do to keep this going, to really keep expanding that change?
Yes.
And then we move together.
Together. Give it up, everybody. All right, folks. Well, I just want to again thank my colleagues for joining here. We had city, county, and state representation showing you what's happening at multiple levels of government, hopefully to inspire you. We have another dynamic panel coming up. I'm going to invite them up. Thank you so much, everybody. Let's invite our next panel up. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So our next panel is coming on up to the fore here. Maria Niggle is going to be our moderator for this panel, everybody. And given that this is First Five Marin, that is co-sponsoring this event. We want to talk about equity of opportunity for children and families in this community. Come on up, folks. Come on up. We want you. How lucky are we to have the leadership at the county, at the Office of Equity that Jamila Jordan provides. I can't imagine this 10 years ago. Thank you, Jamila. You are changing the game, and we feel it. Thank you. Whew. Now I have the opportunity to introduce our incredible local folks who are doing the work, who are operationalizing racial equity every day. And I hope that this can provide a lens into what we're doing, that it can break down silos, that we can learn from each other, that this can be a space and an opportunity where you look around and you see the others in this work, and you do exactly what our last panelist asked us to do. You take risks. Could I have Paul Austin, could you introduce yourself? Oh, there we go.
Yes, how are you doing? My name is Paul Austin. I'm the founder and executive director of Play Marin. Play Marin is just a nonprofit that I started just out of a need to see more kids from the Marin City community specifically to be active and to play sports. But through that, we also wanted to make sure that we opened up access and opportunity for those that normally wouldn't have it. So I take kids and we do, snow trips. We do all the outdoor stuff that Marin County is known for, the mountain biking, the surfing, the kayaking, the sailing, things that when I grew up, I felt like I didn't have access to that. We help run summer camps, but then we also just have our foundation sports of basketball, track and field, girls volleyball. And then we also often want to lead the push for what I call facilities in Marin City specifically, so then kids can have more access.
Mr. Reynolds, thank you. If you could introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamir Reynolds. I'm the founder and executive director of MCCT, or the Marin County Cooperation Team. We are a civil rights multi-service agency. Anybody who knows me here knows I'm pretty blunt. My organization was created during the pandemic because let's just be real, when it broke out, no one was coming to save the black people in Marin City. So we pulled together and really created a grassroots effort that actually caught the attention of the global stage. And so we have initiatives around substance awareness, diabetes, we have the community response teams, and so much more. And what we do, we use the manpower and the magic that exists in Marin City and coming together to really execute. I am a former community school director. I work with Dr. Garcia at the Sausalito Marin City School District, where we were working on the Desegregation Act. And so just thank you for having me.
Denise, if you could introduce.
Hi, my name is Denise Enriquez, and I work for Marin Child Care Council. I am the Family and Community Engagement Manager. Marin Child Care Council, we do trainings for providers. What we do, always, our goal is to give quality childcare. So we train providers, we have parent meetings, we have all kinds of things because we hear what the parents are saying, what the providers are saying, what they need. So we are here just to do that. We are the hub of childcare.
Ramona. And I am Ramona Little Taylor. I'm the Assistant Director of Public Services for the Marin County Free Library. But any work we do is collective, and we have a lot of members of our team here. So just go ahead and stand up, y'all. Stand up, wave. And so the library has partnered with First Five and other community partners for over 20 years to provide our mobile preschool service in addition to books and many more. We do lots of things and we're here for the community and yeah, just happy to be a part.
Welcome, Shayna.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shayna Hewitt. I'm the VP of Early Education for Community Action Marin. So Community Action Marin is Marin County's anti-racist, anti-poverty organization. We provide a myriad of services for the homeless, safety net services, but also early childhood education. We currently have 7 early childhood sites, and that runs in age from 0 or birth to 3. We have a home visiting program, a family child care network. We also serve school-age children, all up and down Marin and also in West Marin.
Thank you. Doctora.
Hi, I'm Christina Gomez. I'm a family medicine provider and the medical director of the Point Reyes and Bolinas Health Centers. We serve West Marin, the community of West Marin. We're a federally qualified health center. And I'm here with people from my team, Rachel Joseph and Lorena Colquicocha, and honored to be a part of this panel. Thanks.
Can I say, I forgot to shout out the team that's here from Community Action Marin. I can't not do that.
Being here. Thank you for being here. Well, we're going to get right to it. And we have some very targeted questions. And part of that is to really understand, you know, after the racial reckoning of 2020, many of us came out with these powerful equity statements, anti-racist statements. And I really want to explore with this group here how that work has impacted them, how they've operationalized that, what they've learned through their process. And so before we get deep into that, I would like to throw out, what do you see are intersecting forms of systemic discrimination operating in your work with children and families?
Oh, okay. I'll go. So for me, the things that I look at as far as, you know, systemic racism as far as families and children, there are 3 areas: financial, environmental, and criminal justice. I want to say something real quick. So I dress like this for a reason today, just to see how you all would treat me if I didn't have a suit on. And I watched some of you curl up when I walk by. You wouldn't look at me, and you probably heard of my work. And that tells me we still have a lot of work to do, because most of you don't even know that I am a published academic author. I run a multi-million-dollar agency. It was started in Marin City, where my heart is. In 2 years, we provided 14 to 15 jobs directly and indirectly. But I still have to dress up for you to acknowledge me. We have a lot of work to do. And so with that being said, I like to deal in data. So the U.S. has among the highest maternal mortality rates, and 60% of these deaths are preventable. But black women are 2.5% times likely to die from a preventable disease than their white counterparts. Racism attacks the body physically. So imagine if the mother and the father is feeling racism and they go home to a child who's in the infant stage all the way up till 5 and passing that trauma along. Or when they come into your agency and it's because they have on a bonnet or slippers and you treat them differently when they're doing the best that they can do to come there and ask for help. We don't really want to admit it, but we bring our biases when we sit at that desk. And most of us in here is a paycheck away from sitting in front of the desk than behind the desk. So for me, it's those 3 areas, and I'll close in this, and even around environmental. Ms. Terry Green, Paul Austin, all been working around water and climate and a sound barrier because the kids in Marin City have high asthma rates and hearing issues. We all know the way that Marin City was constructed was intentional to keep the eye on the brothers and sisters who were coming here from the South. So imagine growing up in that, where it's designed to break you down to where you don't even want to be there anymore. So for me, it is the three areas.
Who would like to go next?
Well, I mean, I'll dive right in since my mic is here and we're, So when we talk about systematic racism that's continuously plaguing certain communities here in Marin County, we know that Marin City is one of those communities. It's a community in which I grew up in. It's a community that still have 2 opportunities for recreational use. We have Rocky Ground Park, which we love tremendously, and then we have the Marin City Recreation Center, which we also love. But the Marin City Rec Center is about 70 years old. It's been well overdue for the county to step in and step up to help work with the community and creating a new community center. So then you can have more access and more resources right there for our neighborhood. I often talk about access because it's really important. Since I've been doing sports for the last 10, 12 years in the Marin City community, and just trying to create a healthier community from the standpoint of people being in recreation, we don't have the same opportunities. We currently don't have a field that's playable. So when we talk about field sports and getting kids involved, which is something directly close to my heart, we just don't have that opportunity. We can't get it done. We need to make sure we take opportunities like this forum to help get the word out, to lean on other people, to open up their wallets to help support what's needed. Earlier, we looked at the life expectancy of 2 communities, or multiple ones, but Marin City was at the very bottom. People are dying off earlier and have been for generations compared to our counterparts throughout Marin County. Why? Well, there's multiple reasons. Jamir just talked about the issues around smog rolling into our community, bad piping, bad water, asthma. We have clusters of what I call cancer, or it's been detected, cancer clusters in Marin County, in Marin City specifically. Marin City might be a Superfund site. We know that the county has been running from that. I've been sitting with my mom, Terry, at the table for a very long time. Our red line community of Marin City have also been thrown in the spotlight. Me and my wife got thrown in that spotlight with appraisal bias and how they've been devaluing our community for ever since it's been there, since 1942, since we was established. These are all things that play and have a direct impact in the health and well-being of a community. All communities deserve the same thing, access and opportunity to be healthy, to be able to move forward and have economic opportunities. So until we actually put our money and our resources, then the disparities will continue to be here. So systems, we have to continue to break down systems within, but then we have to be able to create our own systems also.
Thank you. Thank you. Who would like to go next? Thank you.
For us, it's been that access to services. So we are talking about here, we are here for a common goal. Is I'm singing to the choir, so we all want the same thing. We have the problem of family being eligible for services. And it's also depending who's the person that is serving this family, or actually talking to them or not talking to them. So those are the problems that we have. We don't have the flexibility of staff. hours of operation of many agencies now. After the pandemic, majority are closed 4 days at a time. So we, at work, we have to hear all the parents. We have to listen to the parents, to the families. We work with the families. And what we do, all this work one-on-one, what we invite you to is, since we all are working in silos, because it's a lot of work because of whatever, and there are no resources, no money to expand. Well, I invite you to do something together. Because we meet. I am in so many meetings in the community, and we meet and we develop strategies to do better. But then we don't deliver. So we need all those resources put together. The best thing that we have in the county is the Marin Advocates Network. All the advocates, we meet once a month, and we give resources to each other. See if your family is getting evicted, or many of you have received all those emails that Jose Luis, the person in charge of the program, does. But what we're doing one-on-one, that is not working. It is a system that is not working. We need to change the system. Altogether, we can do it. But as a family advocate, I will always be a family advocate. We work with the family. And the family doesn't have only one issue. It's not only childcare. The family has housing, food, mental health, and so many other things that we can all sit and agree on, but we don't have the solution for it. Why? Because the systems are not working. So we need to change that. How do we do that? Let's talk and put something in action. Because we do have plans, we don't deliver.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you need a refresh on the question?
Oh, no, I got the question.
All right.
But before I answer it, I want to say that I feel like I appreciate that Javier uplifted, the bias that exists in this room and beyond. And I also want to name specifically that there is an issue with how Black women are treated in Marin County, very specifically. And we witnessed that with our equity director and the energy with which that community member came in, because he didn't have to talk like that. So I think we just need to start naming that his energy seems specific. And, we got you, Jamila, and we're gonna move on. But he didn't have to talk like that, and people talk like that every single day to Black women in Marin County. They talk to me like that, constantly. So, but moving back to the question, for the library, it is race, poverty, and language access. Libraries were never built to serve communities of color. Libraries were never built to serve people who speak multiple languages, have different immigrant status. It was built for white, affluent communities. That's our history. So we start by unpacking that, naming it, as Jamila said, and seeing how we can structurally change just how that discrimination exists within our own institution. Another way we see that show up is through accessibility, and specifically, libraries as quiet spaces are inaccessible. Because looking at cultural, looking at people with different abilities, being required to be quiet is a you're not welcome sign. Woo. And so before I pass it on, sorry, I lost my place. We connect to the legacy of discrimination and racism within our library spaces. We see it, the communities where we own the buildings are not the communities where communities of color are. Those are the buildings that we lease. And so, we have deep work to do. That's also where you see a disparity in the staffing levels. You have Marin City, who has 56 operating hours. They have 5 staff. You have other branches who have the same number of operating hours and have 3 times that number. So that's the work that we are doing, with leadership from our director, Lana, who's here, and Lawin, to really look deeply within the structures that are in libraries to really change and make a change to interrupt all of this.
I think we see the iniquities. I mean, we just looked at all of the statistics this morning, right? We see the iniquities in who's receiving free and subsidized childcare. I see it in this room, right? We're talking about who needs to be at the table, who needs to be part of these conversations. And if we look at this room, we can see that it's not equitable, right? Super happy to be here, super proud to be here, but we have to see that. We have to recognize it. Early childhood education is one of the lowest paid professions, right? And it's baked into our funding streams, right? It's baked into federal, state, county funding streams. And the ones who are feeling the brunt of that are the providers, who are generally women of color. So that's just historically. At Community Action Marin, we're happy that there are programs like ESEPs, where we're paying aspiring teachers to be in classrooms, supporting them as they get their early childhood education units, giving them an opportunity to get their permits and helping them through that. And that's something that they wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to do, unfortunately, but we're able to do that. So, you just see it across the board in who has access to what to impact the field.
Thank you.
I think three things come to mind. The first thing is just our medical system. We're still taught race-based medicine, even though there's no scientific basis of that. When I order a lab, I still get a renal function for a white person and an African-American person, even though there is no basis for that. So if we think about we're in health centers, and those of us that are being trained in a non-scientific way that that teaches us that race distinguishes people, or that we should treat people differently based on race with no scientific facts. That's part of the problem. So want to name that. Another part of the problem is lack of access to for people of color to even enter the medical profession. We just don't have enough people of color who can get to this place. So me being a white provider, even sitting up here in this position is part of the problem. Me being a white provider that's serving a community of Latino patients is part of the problem, because I can't find people who look like the communities in which they need to be serving. I can't find Latino providers or providers of color because there just aren't any. So that's part of the problem from the medical standpoint, from our healthcare standpoint. Within our healthcare, within our clinics, there's inequities, huge inequities. Our providers are all white. That's part of the problem. Again, I am a leader, I'm a white leader in an organization with mostly white leaders. That is part of the problem. And we serve communities of color, and we serve marginalized communities. That is our mission. And so I think it's important to look at that. Our front office, back office staff are mostly Latina people. And there are power dynamics that are inequitable. And so I think we can't really begin to even look outside of the walls of our clinic at inequities unless we're looking within at the inequities that we are a part of and complicit in every single day. Other part is, speaking of early childhood education or early childhood services, Maria and many people have been part of trying to even just get providers out to West Marin, to the point that when we've in the time I've been at this clinic, which is about 4 years, every single child that we've referred under 5 for that needed speech, physical therapy, OT, never got it in West Marin. And part of that is vendors aren't paid to come out to a rural area. They're not paid for their time. The kids that are impacted are our Latino kids living out on ranches, or our marginalized kids in the community. They have parents who may not speak English, who are navigating English dominant systems. They have parents who are poor, lower socioeconomic status, don't have access to transportation, don't have the resources that they need to be able to get what they need to thrive. So we have kids who, by the time of 5, are already behind because they didn't get what they needed to thrive in schools. And that's a problem. It's a big problem. We're really failing our kids out there. The third piece is housing, which everybody's mentioned. And out in West Marin, we have huge lack of housing, but more than that, we have a largely Latina population of predominantly undocumented immigrants from Guatemala and Mexico living on ranches, some of them working farms, some of them where they're just paying rent for really deplorable conditions and very high rents. And so we've been engaged in, we've seen the health impacts that has. And that's been a big thing. And we're a clinic. We serve everybody. We serve the entire community. We serve the tenants on the ranch. We serve the ranch owners. And that understandably has been brought up a lot of equity questions and conversations and shifts in focus and priorities to those who are most impacted, which has threatened the status quo and caused tensions within our own staff in our own clinic that we're in the midst of addressing.
Thank you. It's amazing when you just approach this work from a beginner's mind and you just spend some time to listen. Thank you for listening. I think this is really important. Thank you to our panelists for really being honest. And I know this is also taking a risk, and we are honored to have you. Thank you. The next question is, does your organization have a racial equity statement? And if yes, how do you operationalize your racial equity statement? How does your organization hold itself accountable in its work towards racial equity? Who would like to go first?
Wow, my family over there calling me out. We actually do. But before I read it, I want to ask you all in here, how many of you ever heard of the Guaifana? The Guaifana from Guatemala, the Afro-Mesos from El Salvador.
Yes, buddy.
Right? Now, all right, so in 2015, the Mexican census just counted over 1 million Afro-Mexicans living in Oaxaca, right? Now, I'm naming these groups of people to show you we are literally all connected. For our Latino brothers and sisters, the average Latino brothers and sisters, when we break down your DNA, is 6.7% African ancestry that is coursing through your veins. So before I read this statement, I just want you all to know that the system was designed to divide us, and that's why when we have these conversations, it seems so isolated. But you all need to know that 200,000 slaves were sent to Mexico in the 1700s to work alongside our Mexican brothers and sisters. So it is time for us to tear down the silos and start working together. And so our racial equity statement is, our organization is a nonprofit committing to upholding the civil rights and tearing down the silos that prevent marginalized communities from accessing quality resources and services. Our mission is to empower these communities by providing them with the tools they need to thrive. We remain dedicated to our cause and work tirelessly to ensure that everyone has equal access to resources and services that they need to succeed. In Marin County, there is only 6,000 African Americans. More than half of them are youth. The one thing that I hear a lot when folks come to our agency is that when they go into various other agencies, they are made to feel less than. From body language. And we often talk about access to services, but what about the quality customer service that needs to accompany those access to services? Are you making me feel like I'm supported here? Or are you making me feel like I'm less than? If I don't speak English, are you going to bring your biases in and say, well, you should know English? Well, English is only the fourth most spoken language. I believe it dropped to the 5th in the world. The #1 most spoken language in the world is Mandarin. The second one is Hindi. So we are at the bottom. So why can't we be more of a customer service mind? All of us in here are in the customer service field, whether you like it or not. If no one walks into your building, you will not have a job. And some of us have the nerve to act like gatekeepers. When really, if I had a better opportunity in my life, I could probably have your job. But you treat me in such a way that I have to go out and I take that trauma out to my kids and I bring it home and it causes me stress and ulcers. Then I have a heart attack. I engage in substance abuse and so many other things. But we stand on the front line screaming equity, but we phrase when we help, well, if I was you, well, damn it, you're not me. So again, our statement for MCCT, we are a civil rights nonprofit agency that helps out folks in Marin County. Paul helps kids all over Marin County. Ebony, Kahea, Ayin, Lakeisha, Ida, we help people all over Marin County. And another thing, and I'm gonna close it. Just because I'm black doesn't mean I know everybody in Marin City. All right.
Thank you. In Marin Child Care Council, we do not have an equity statement officially. But at what we do, it is. So let me read some of that. So for those who don't know, okay, MC3 was founded with the goal of providing quality child care, development for the families, and education services for families and child care providers. And so we live by all those goals that we always have. It's what we do and what we do best. So our doors are always open. Even in the pandemic, we were open. We are open, why? Because we value that the person that took the time to come to our office will have an answer. If we can serve them, we can tell them where to go and what to do. We and Marin Child Care Council, all of us, we are a small by number an agency, but we do everything. We pay the child care providers. We actually train them. It's also that for free. They're independent contractors. And we also, once a year, in this very room, we do a big event for them, giving them thank you. So actually it's gonna be on the 10th of May, so many already have signed up. So this is why we do that for providers, to keep them together. Why? Because there is not enough money that we can pay them, because it's what the state gives us. So this county is one of the richest counties. Why are we still with the rates that the state gives us when all this work is so valuable? Without childcare, we don't have workers. And without workers, we don't have servers. We don't have all those things that we already know. So we need money. We need local money, and we are going to look for it. So stay tuned.
Thank you.
So at the library, we don't have a racial equity statement, but during our strategic plan process that just wrapped up, we did do an audit of our mission, and we developed a vision statement, because if we can't vision what we're trying to build, like, is it ever gonna happen? Probably not. So our updated mission is we provide welcoming, equitable, and inclusive opportunities for everyone. Our vision is that we believe in empowered and thriving communities built on diverse voices and perspectives, and we believe in a just Marin that advances equity for communities of color. We've been on this journey to operationalize equity in libraries since 2016 at MCFL, and we started by normalizing the conversation. If our staff can't have conversations about race, they definitely can't be in community, doing deep community engagement, and really listening. And so that's what we started. All staff meetings, all committee meetings, any branch meeting, any meeting that's held has an equity discussion so that the staff could build that muscle and like being able to actually talk about it and have the conversation first. And then we started looking at the data, created areas of focus. For us, educational equity is the focus. That is what aligns with the library. And looking at targeted areas of the county, we created positions that were focused on educational equity. We have 2 of our education equity coordinators, Rashida Scar from Marin City, Madeline Bryant at West Marin, and then we also have Hector Garcia here, who's representing South Novado's manager, Natalie McCall. So we remove barriers like going fine-free. You know, quickly raise your hand if you've ever been shamed or given a fine for a library. It's gonna be a lot of people, so don't be shy. So we remove that because again, if someone falls in love with a book, great, we've accomplished our goal, as opposed to making them feel bad, charging them for it. You know, the county did collect. There wasn't actual collections for fines, which makes no sense. So again, that's one of those systems that we needed to unpack and remove as a barrier. We also developed new programs, just quickly, like our mobile preschool program. There are not many libraries. Yes, shout out for Learning Bus, led by Alejandra Cruz. There are not many libraries who have a mobile preschool. So this is part of the work. We also have staff who we have trained to get Department of Justice accreditation to provide legal immigration services and help with completing N400s for free. Those are the types of programs that we have developed, and we've also had to release legacy programs like summer reading, which I know some of you have really positive memories of summer reading and getting a bunch of tchotchkes and plastic. But did that change the data that Catalyst California showed? No. None of that has changed any data. We have not stopped Summer Slide. We've done a lot of things, but it did not do the outcome, which is changing reading levels and literacy rates. So we've had to release that and say, if there's something successful that we are doing, like reading buddies, one-on-one tutoring help, that's what we need to do in the summer. And that's a hard conversation because the community likes getting stuff, like plastic stuff that the kids never play with. So we've had to release some of the legacy programs and just move forward, and that's part of how we've operationalized it. And also just recognizing we fail constantly, and we will continue to fail, and we support the staff in saying, you know, take that feedback, dig deep, and then keep showing up and doing the work.
Yes. Woo! Thank you.
I'd like to share Community Action Marin's equity statement as well. It is, we hold a shared vision for equity. Those who live, work, and visit Marin, including all racial and ethnic groups, experience fair and just inclusion. We act together to rectify historic patterns of racial class and gender marginalization, ensuring that all see themselves reflected in decision-making and that all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. Accountability is something that we take very seriously at Community Action Marin. We're currently doing DEI work, and when I say we, I'm talking about our leadership team, our executive team, and our board. We recognize where we are in this fight and understand that there's more work to be done. There's always more work to be done. In addition, most of our frontline staff are people of color, and we have our staff satisfaction survey that we do annually, and not do it just to do it, but also to understand where we are, what things are needed, what we can do better. We also have our staff council, who is a group of mostly frontline staff that come together to bring the issues forward and then work on those issues. So we'll look at the results of the satisfaction survey and work together, right, to make sure that we're all at the same level, we're all understanding what needs to be done, and everyone is included, right? And that survey is really grounded in inclusivity and belonging and designed to highlight if we're not providing those things.
I just want to lift, and we're getting short on time, but I just want to lift, I'm hearing some themes around accountability, which is like continuous improvement. You may make a mistake. How do you fail forward, as my old colleagues used to say? I appreciate that insight. Thank you. Paul, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'll dive in real quickly because I know we're pressed with time. But Play Marin is a nonprofit in Marin County that seeks to solve the equity issue that affects youth in their engagement of sports and recreation. It aims to create a more inclusive society through its recruitment of youth from Marin City and other parts of Marin County, resulting in the opportunities of more diversity and representation for all. By allowing youth to be united through play, Marin County will move past tolerance and become a more inclusive place to live. The ability to understand, trust, and appreciate one another is vital. Highlighting the talent, compassion, and kindness that exist in Marin City and other communities, that may be challenged with negative stereotypes, afford the rest of Marin the opportunity to experience how amazing these communities really are.
Thank you. So, as we're short on time, I'm wondering, I'm gonna throw out the last question because I think it's important. I think it comes up a lot, and I think we have some real experts on this, on the answers here. How have you prioritized and incorporated community engagement in your racial equity work? And you can popcorn. It doesn't have to be down the line. Would anyone like to start?
Start on the far end. There you go.
Okay. In Marin Charter Council, we design programs for parents. We have access to quality care program. With that, we serve the whole, not only the child, but the whole family. We work with the child care provider, and our other staff members visit the sites and work from the strength of the providers to bring them up to have quality child care. We have the HEAL program because it is very important for us that the kids know what a healthy meal is, what it looks like. So they are designed for them. So it is a full circle. We do that, and we always take care of the part of the family, that whatever goes back at home. We have children that, as Dr. Gomez was saying, that they don't have services for early intervention. We've been working with each family one-on-one. We want to change that. We have created, because of the need of what is going on, a group of parents is Parents in Action. Why? Because we listen to them, and we, as Matthew said, they have the answers. I'm not going to tell them what they need. I might think, because I'm the same color, I know what you need. No, it's not. It's not one size fits all. So that's what we're doing. We have parents that are here representing Parents in Action. Why? Because it's so important to them. So we are here to support that, and we are here to knock at doors that haven't been open for us. And it might not be in this room. It might be changing systems. And we're ready for it. Thanks.
Okay, I guess I'm saying something. I think that for the library, this is part of our shift, basically empowering our staff, who are our greatest resource, to know that they can leave the branch and go out in the community and ask them what the community wants. If you're in community, then the community can define what we are doing as services, and that's going to be a priority for our strategic plan. One of the pillars is community power, and we mean it when we say that. That's going to mean our commission looks different. It's going to mean that the Friends of the Library looks different. It means that the staff will be outside of the branch in community. And seeing that the library, which has been a very place-based, institution, that we have to go out of our doors and meet community wherever they are. And so that's how we'll be doing community engagement and really making that the focus of year one for the strategic plan is hearing from the community. Look at Jamila. The community has said clearly many times what they want. And so now it's that the library has to listen. So that's what we'll be doing.
Great, thank you.
So at Community Action Marin, one of our levers for change is building power with people. And notice it's not giving power to people or empowering people, but building power with people. One of the examples of that is recently staff, frontline staff, our chief strategy officer went to Sacramento for Head Start Advocacy Day. And that was really important because we're making visible to those who are making the laws about early childhood education and the funding, we're making visible to them those that they're serving, right? We're bringing the parents and the staff into the forefront, parents and staff who are primarily people of color, right? So making sure that they're part of the change that needs to take place out in the community, doing the work. Like we said, that not one size fits all, not one thing for all, really saying what it is they need on an individual basis and having their voices heard. So we facilitate that.
One of the things I'd say is I came to West Marin 3 or 4 years ago from Petaluma and as part of a merger and came in ready to listen to the community. And it took me a while to understand who I was hearing and who was speaking up. And that those that we were hearing were actually people with agency that were speaking really loud. And it took a while to understand there was a part of the community that wasn't speaking up, that we weren't hearing, that didn't feel agency in any way. So I think that's important. That was an important lesson for me to learn, to really think about who are we hearing, who are we not hearing. And then part of what we've done is physically go out. We're a rural area. There are ranches all around, and actually going out and seeing where people live has been essential. We have a patient navigator named Judith Bravo who lives on ranches from the community and has been a really essential part of connecting with the Latino community and having trust. And we've gone out, again, physically and seen the housing that patients have lived in, which has helped fuel our advocacy for better housing conditions. It's helped us be able to actually see what conditions people are living in, the mold they're exposed to. There was a ranch where the soil was found to have petroleum products and sewage in the soil. Our kids were playing in the soil. There was no heating, just really deplorable conditions. Again, people paying really high rents for this. And so that's been really important and engaging and working alongside the people as they started to speak up and have their own voice, which has rocked the community in, I think, an important way. And I think according to I forget who mentioned the prior panel, it really clicked for me to think of this as an opportunity, the crisis as an opportunity, because it has fueled the essential need to have these conversations, again, within our walls. We have biases, we all have our own biases amongst our staff, amongst people seeing these patients. They have biases, and there's no way that can't influence or impact how we're treating people, how we see people, how we respond to them, how we hear them, how we don't hear them, how we deny their realities, how we deny their lived realities, how we pretend to think that we know better or more about how they live or what they're experiencing. So I think that's been essential, and we're trying to listen to those that haven't been heard most, engage them in our grant opportunities, ask them what do they need, to Matthew Trujillo's point, just really do that more. And I think we're conditioned to not do that. I notice I'll be in a meeting and I'll say, well, I think they need this and this and this. And then after I'm like, I don't know we didn't even ask. And again, trying to bring tenants from the ranches into those meetings when we're talking about grant opportunities and what they need and mobile clinics and trying to get out to them and actually show up directly for them. So.
Oof, thank you. I have time for one more answer. Who would like to take it?
I'll just make it real quickly. Just trying to be available to be more collaborative with different organizations. Partnership is a huge one that Play Marin, leans its hat on, and it's something that we do tremendously. And so networking and partnering. Currently, I must say we're working, Marin City is working side by side with the Marin Climate Justice Collaborative as we look at all the environmental issues that's plaguing both Marin City as well as the canal. And that's a huge one when we start looking at infrastructure issues and what we could do to help help both communities fight with each other for each other's community, which is something that usually hasn't happened, right? Like usually Marin City is fighting with Marin City, Canal is fighting for the canal. But now if we continue to come to the table more closely together, then we could get more done.
Woo! Yeah. Just short.
All right, listen, I swear I'm not the angry black man, so I don't want you guys to feel like that. And some of you may ask, like, well, who are you? But to give you my educational background, I'm a doctoral candidate. I have a master's degree in education. So just know that this information is really coming from a quantitative and qualitative perspective. So one of the things that was presented earlier was that I believe it said the Asian and the Hawaiian Pacific Islander was doing 83%, and we should look at what they're doing. That's pretty hard to do when your community has been systemically kept down. And that's where we lose sight because we try to focus on what everyone else is doing instead of addressing the ills that impact our community. And for us, it's especially African Americans and in particular African American women who are often viewed as aggressive and so many other things, and you confuse their aggressiveness with passion. And they're tired of being overlooked, or a black man because he talks with his hands that he's threatening, and really, I'm just from Trenton, New Jersey, and this is what we do. We talk with our hands. But the way that we incorporate equity into what we do, we actually go into the Muslim communities. We actually have helped, thanks to Ida, we have helped some Ukrainian refugees. We help domestic violence victims. We go into the canal and do coat drives and feed individuals. And I know that I'm often relegated to, oh, you only help black people. When you look at our data, it says something totally different. And so for us, we are literally out in the community looking at the data because that informs what we do. If you look at the kids, go to kidsdata.org. In this particular county, grades 7, 9, and 11, young African American women have the highest substance abuse rate than their black male counterparts. That is the data. When you go to the California school dashboard and you look at absentee rates and so many other things, the data is there, but are we using it to inform our work? In the California prison system, 70% of the prisoners read at a 4th grade level. So what that tells me is that they were underdiagnosed and overly medicated. That led them, if they were in special education to prison pipeline. And no one cared enough. Or when young black girls are being suspended at a higher rate than any other group in the school system. And what about the student who wrote the word, and I'm gonna say it, nigger on her forehead, and it's all over social media? Nah, don't get quiet. This is what is going on. So when we talk about incorporating equity and so many other things, we need to start at home first. We so busy trying to save the world and our house is burning down. Because community starts from the inside and works its way out, not the other way around. Thank you.
Let's give a round of applause again to this incredible panel. Thank you for your bravery. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for putting it out there for all of us to see. We cannot look away. You've named the elephant, and we appreciate you. I could not have asked for a better segue to the next component of this conversation. Thank you. Once again. Yeah, you got it? Yeah, got it? You got it?
I'm just going to click ahead so they can see that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Didn't realize you had it. So we're not going to leave here with just our listening ears on. We are actually going to ask you to sit together in community with all these other risk takers in a space of possibility to talk a little bit more about how are you advancing racial equity in both your professional and personal life? What actions are you taking? You'll see the questions on the table. There are 3 of them. I'm also going to ask all of you to respect where everyone is at, to practice deep listening, to practice compassion. This is about listening to your neighbor. This is about starting from the inside out. This is not a performance. This is real talk. And that's what we're asking of you. So please, 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 you can start. Thank you. We realize that we have hit time, and the fact that the majority of people are still here makes us feel pretty amazing and honored, Thank you. Thank you for having these conversations. And before we leave... Are we not doing any highlights? Yeah, we're going to do. You did. I want to honor somebody, because when the first race count report came out, this would not have been possible. And there is one person in this room that created the conditions for this conversation to happen here today. Can we please give a round of applause to Michelle Fedeli? Talk about taking risks. I'm going to pass the microphone to Jamila. Thank you, Jamila. Once again, honored to have you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Everybody, I know we're over time here. If folks have to make their exit, please do so quietly. We just want to hear a couple of highlights, okay? We want to hear some highlights. I know we have a couple of mic runners as well. And it looks like Dr. Garcia has one of the first highlights. Let's listen in to what he's sharing.
Thank you. I have a couple of highlights from this table, and it was about interagency cooperation and the fact that, like, one variable is not going to cure this issue, right? And so we have to be working on housing and early childhood education and healthcare access and food access as if they are one thing. But I also want to give you one last statistic. $1.7 million for 282,000 people is $6 per person. Budgets are statements of values. Full stop. Also, you've got 4 people working in the equity office. That is 1 person for every 70,000 people in Marin County.
Full stop. Full stop. Let's give it up for that. Let's hear just a couple of quick highlights, and I'm going to ask you to be brief. Michelle, this table looks ready to rock and roll. Let's hear from them. Who's your speaker? Hot potato. Take it away.
Okay, this is good right here. Yeah. So we talked a lot about our, how much we connected with our personal lives, especially with all of us, some of us growing up, especially me, South Asian, my parents immigrating here in a post 9/11 world was a lot, and it was really nice, especially one thing I specifically took away was seeing all the amazing women on the board and seeing people actually doing change. And I just graduated college a year ago, so it's really inspirational to be here and see where I want to see myself also in a couple of years.
Oh, right on. Right on. You're up here next. Okay. Let's see. Let's go over there, please, Michelle. If you don't mind, we're going to make our way. We're just going to hear a couple more folks, okay? Hang in there with us. All right. Michelle's getting her steps in today.
Well, I just want to say that I'm kind of a random person who just came to this because I was interested in this subject, and I almost didn't come because I was like, I'm not sure I belong there. And then being here, just like understanding that, like I'm in my community, and I'm going to get my community. I'm going to get my community here, and I'm going to get my community and then connect with all you people. And so, yeah.
Right on. Yes, you belong here. You belong here. Michelle. Oh, goodness. Oh, no, sorry. Yep.
to try to get it on the agenda. Thank you. I'm trying so hard to get these arrest demographics on the agenda for the Board of Supervisors. They would never do it. I've been going since 2021. I want to repeat now that the mic is working. CPRA, the racial arrest demographics, arrests referred to prosecution from 1989 through 2020 in this county. And over a 32-year period, 1989 through 2020, it shows black individuals arrested and referred to prosecution on average over 8 times their demographic presence in the county, and your Board of Supervisors will not put it on the agenda. So please, I ask you, when we're talking about equity, one of the biggest drivers of inequity is over policing, and with 3 deaths in the county jail in the last 7 months, we have a higher death rate than Rikers. We need to look at these issues. It's nice to talk about equity, but really the brass tacks is how the money comes down. They got $2.86 million additional last year. This is, let's do something.
Thank you so much. Let's hear maybe one more. Michelle, right there for our friend right there, please. And then I'll go to you there, and then we'll wrap it up, everybody.
Hi, first, thank you so much for everything you shared. It was really inspiring. At the same time, I would like to, first, I'm a Latina community, talking about how we feel, talking about crisis, and crisis we find opportunities. But we have been living in crisis for so long. We are a resilient community, and I hear we are resilient. When is enough to keep fighting for our place, for the respect that we deserve as a community members? At the same time, there is a fear of community leadership, community power, because of the challenge, how we challenge the status quo. Doesn't mean we are against, we're just trying to improve the system so then it can work for everyone who is included in this community. There is a misunderstanding, I believe, that we, the Latina community, only live in San Rafael or Novato or in Canal, are segregated communities. No, we are in many, many different areas in this county, but For example, in the Rose Valley area, where we do have Latina community, we don't have the support, the resources, the funding, because we are in the Rose Valley zip code that shares that we are not eligible for these services. Let's think about that when we talk about equity. Let's think about what really means for all of us when we talk about diversity, when we talk about inclusion, when we talk about sense of belonging. Then it's also how we can change our mindset. Then start talking about those people or these people. We start talking about our people because we are all part of this community. We need to really transform the narrative that really keep us in silos. It's really, inequities are making us sick. Literally sick.
Yes.
We are sick. We need to move forward in another area where we're not just sick or surviving, but thriving. But we need to be transparent when we're talking about equity. We have a lot of work in this county. Participatory budget was an excellent idea, but we still need a lot of work to make it equitable, to make the small projects who participate in these ideas more present, with more resources, so then they can also have a fair participation. So that's one of the ideas, how we can improve. Yes. But then also the other part is, for me personally, if you can look at us, we're not just good for domestic labor, we're not just good for labor. We're look for being here in these tables, having critical thinking conversations, but we don't see many of our people. So how we can do what we did almost 15 years ago with the portrait of Marin. The portrait of Marin was talking about the life expectancy, talking about Ross and San Rafael and the difference in life expectancy. We talk about it in Spanish. We brought that information. We changed it. Alexandra, some of us, we were able to change the portrait of Marin in English to Spanish, so then we can use that as a tool to go to our communities and have conversations with our families in our communities in a small group conversations. And that's how we also created more information that supports your data. How we can look at the data in a more humanized way, where it's not just the number, it's a story and experience behind that number. So if you can make this presentation in Spanish, for example, and we can use that as a tool and bring it back to our community, that would be great. That would be another action. And the last one, and the last action I felt too, is that this type of conversations, this type of presentations, if you can also make it more accessible for other community members who are working families who cannot be here because of the schedule. So that would be another action to think about. And please, in your board and your organizations, have an equity committee. Really make sure that there is a language access and justice in every single organization you have. Really build your budget to start thinking about that, because it's a right. It's a human right, and we really need to work on that too.
All right, all right. That table was working over there. Okay, let's go to this person here.
Hi, so we had school teachers, and she works with DOIs and all that, and we also talked about having access to programs with that include all languages, particularly with the DUI programs, how they are inaccessible monetarily, but also they're only offered in English, and they need to be offered in other languages. And as being school teachers, they've gone, but Bahia Vista, I'm teaching in Marin City, and we talked about how the school districts need to allow more interdistrict transfers. There's no reason for mostly all the black and brown children to be going to school in Marin City or the Canal. Right. So there's a lot more schools, and if they allow interdistrict transfers and weren't biased about it, then we'd see a lot more people who look like us as teachers and who look like us as students in other schools. So there's no reason for all the brown children to be at Bahia Vista in San Pedro and all the black kids to be in Marin City. Yes. Like, let's call it out. Okay. We got to work on that.
Yes. So. Okay. So we're gonna wrap here. We got maybe I'm gonna do 2 more. Okay, I got some folks. I'm gonna go to my friend Ebony here. Then we're gonna make our way there, and then my last is that in the back, okay?
Hello.
Yes, take it away.
Hi, Jamila.
Hi there.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. This table, pretty much, we just want to see a solution. Now, we can spend the rest of this journey trying to figure out what is what. But at the end of the day, what's going to happen, because we can't live in reverse. We can't. We don't know the future. So in these moments in time, what are we going to do to make a difference for the lives of humans? Black, the Latino, the whomever. Because we're all on this journey just trying to survive, just trying to make the best of this life. But not only for us, but for our children, for our grandchildren. So we need some, so we talk partnerships? Hold on a second, y'all.
Okay, Miss Ida's gonna give us a speed round real quick, Miss Ida.
Coupled with that is we talked about partnerships and how do we connect with leaders in the community, in our, leader, yes, in government.
Yes, okay, thank you for that. We're gonna round us out here, everybody. Hang in there, we got 2 more brilliant comments to make. Let's go back there, please. And then Dr. Garcia has my friend there.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So there's something that been lingering around my mind since Matthew, Mr. Trujillo out there started talking. And that's this concept of the community participatory action research.
Yes.
So we used to bring in a lot of community to our tables and given 1 or 2 spaces for them to voice their opinion. However, a lot of us don't go out there and meet the community at where they're at. I've been a person who accesses a lot of resources in the county for a long time. I didn't have opportunity, I didn't have access, homeless, I mean, you name it, right? I am in a total different position now. I'm an undergrad researcher about to finish my Bachelor's of Science. Woo! Representation matters. I also sit in a board here in Marin County. And I do this undergrad research and community action research, and I really seen how that empowers and involves the community. These are ways to also for agencies to decide how to spend the money that you got on a grant. It's not just about bringing them to the table, but also making them part of the process of what you're trying to change. It's not putting on paper, oh, community needs housing, but what else to that story? There's a lot of more things that were not mentioned here today. The data tells us a lot of things, and I bet you half of the room did not understand the data that was on the graphics, that was on the charts. And what do you think the community out there on the streets know or think, or how do they access this data?
Yes, yes.
Another way to bring this into tying in a community, we have 2 junior colleges close by and 2 universities. Those places are full of future leaders. They're involved in research. Mr. Jamir Ansha mentioned here, he's a publisher. All of these talents are close to us in a way that they're not being utilized to better our communities. Community participatory action research. Thank you.
All right, everybody, this is our last speaker here for round us out. Take us on home.
Okay, just really quickly. My name is Chanel. I work with Community Housing Partnership. We have been here in Marin for 7 years. So first thing I want to say is it is Second Chance Month. April is Second Chance Month, and the people that we work with are directly impacted with biases, being that they are from a re-entry population. So we see this every day, and I can say within the 7 years that we have been here, we have had 200 people walk through our door to receive employment services, all voluntary, not mandatory by not on conditions of their release, but because they really want to gain employment and bring income into their homes. And with that 200 people that we service each year, 45% of them have held their job for 365 days. Mentioning this because there is that other percentage that gets told no so many times that they only resort back to behaviors that they know, right? And so as I was sitting here talking with the people at the table, I mentioned that in Marin, the no's are frequent and the no's are nasty and the no's are very direct, just based off of perception of who we work with. And so I have to have an employee represent people as they're going out into the community and say why they're viable, why they should be hired, why they should have employment, right? So if that's not the epitome of bias, I can't tell you what that is, right?
Yes.
The people can't go out on their own as you and I can and present ourselves with our applications and our resumes and get a possible yes. They have to have a third party speak for them. So I can't remember her name. She was sitting here. She was one of the panelists. She talked about softening people.
Yes.
And so that is what I ask as we come into the community. If we walk through your doors, if we're sending people to you, soften the people so that our people can have more opportunity.
Beautifully said. What a great way to close us out, everybody. You all are the real MVPs. We got to close out. We're getting kicked out of here, Ricardo. You are the real MVPs for sticking it out with us. I want to express my sincere gratitude. Thank you so much. Please be in touch. Have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.